Republicans who have not supported Kevin McCarthy, which means right now he does not have the votes in order to claim the Speaker's gavel at the end of this first round. So what we could see next is that the House will just go on to the next ballot. There will be multiple rounds of voting. And again, this has not happened in 100 years. So what we are watching right now is history unfold right before our eyes. And I can tell you that I caught up with Republican leader Kevin McCarthy just moments before he walked onto the House chamber for the fight of his life here when it comes to leadership and gaining the Speaker's gavel. And he told us that he's willing to fight this out. This will be a battle. He knows it, but he's willing to go on for as long as it takes, Kira.
How long could it take? I mean, they can keep voting and voting and voting. I mean, could this go on for days?
Well, I could tell you, looking back in history, the longest took 2 months in the late 1800s, and then 133 votes. You have some Republicans like Congressman Matt Gaetz. He's saying that has to cave. This is a staring match between two different groups. One group is sort of the only Kevins, people that are only supporting Kevin McCarthy. The other group are people that are never Kevins, and that is a small group of conservatives who have made it clear that they will not back him. The only issue is that is enough to keep that Speaker gavel away from Kevin McCarthy at this point, Kira.
Rick Klein, I know you're joining into the mix right now. I mean, Rachel really summed it up right there. It's a stare down, as Rachel has said. You've got the only Kevins versus the never Kevins. It looks like round one here didn't go Kevin McCarthy's way. So as we kind of watch history unfold here, as Rachel mentioned, late 1800s, it took 2 months. What are your predictions? I know it's hard to even really give a good prediction because this is unprecedented what we're seeing, but it's no doubt the drama that many of these members wanted.
McCarthy is not getting it on the first ballot. Write it down. So far, we've already got 7 votes by Republicans for someone other than Kevin McCarthy, and I think we're only through the D's or so alphabetically. It's very possible, if not probable, that that Congressman Jeffries, the Democratic leader, will get more votes for Speaker on this first round than McCarthy. That won't make him Speaker. He's not going to become Speaker. But these no votes have made themselves evident and put themselves forward on the floor. Just the quick math on this: 222 House Republicans. So that means that McCarthy could lose as many as 4. And the fact that he's at 7 already, and alphabetically we have way more than half of the House of Representatives to go, means he's likely to be significantly short of where he needs to be. Talked to a House Democrat on the floor a little while ago who says the buzz there is that they're looking at about 3 votes minimum. But of course, there's no way to know because the individual concessions are going to be what matters. But what it is clear now, as they go through the motions here alphabetically, is that Kevin McCarthy will not become the House Speaker on the first ballot.
All right, now, I believe it was you, Rick, more than an hour, maybe a couple hours ago, said, and we could see another candidate appear. And sure enough, the name Andy Biggs has now been tossed into the hat. It explained what happened, and it happened very quickly, I guess, within the last half an hour, 45 minutes or so. What does this mean now to have another player in the mix?
Well, Andy Biggs' name was put into nomination, which at least qualifies him to technically receive these votes. His colleague Paul Gosar gave a short nominating speech. No one that I've talked to thinks that Andy Biggs is going to become the House Speaker. The question is going to be whether someone else emerges. There were a few scattered votes so far for Jim Jordan, the congressman in Ohio, who's in line to lead the Judiciary Committee. He has said outright that he is a McCarthy supporter, but this may be a signal of some Republicans who say, I don't want to go necessarily with the Freedom Caucus far-right person. I also don't want to go with McCarthy. Maybe you have to plant that vote elsewhere. So I think at this time, if there is another Speaker's candidate to emerge, that person is not being voted on in this round of voting. What would have to happen functionally is that if McCarthy realizes he doesn't get the votes, he throws his support to someone else. Maybe that's Steve Scalise, maybe even Elise Stefanik, who put his name into nomination. But yes, you're seeing a coalescing of non-McCarthy or never McCarthy votes around a few other people right now. I don't think either of those or any of those people are going to be the last person standing against him, though.
You know, Rick, how disastrous do you think? I don't mean to be negative. However, no functioning Congress means you can't get anything through. So if the voting continues and there is no speaker, then this so many other issues, including things that everyday Americans are concerned about, like the economy.
The biggest thing McCarthy has going for him is that dynamic, exactly. That and the fact that so many members of Congress want to get on to do other things. They've got friends and family in the gallery. They want to get on to receptions and dinners. That might motivate them as well. But the fact that they're paralyzed, the fact that they've got this moment that they dreamt about, that they finally take over the House majority and can't do anything with it until they have a House Speaker, ultimately, I think that is what is going to drive the negotiations to get someone over the top to become House Speaker, either with that magic number of 218 or by changing the rules of the threshold to a lower number.
All right, Jay O'Brien also there on the Hill for us, a part of our top political team here. Where are we now, as Rick and I were talking, up to date on where we are, the number of votes, what letter? Go ahead. You've got the floor. No pun intended.
Yeah, well, thank you. We've got that. We're in the G's now. We're looking at least 7 to 8 plus no votes by my count. And by the way, when you say a no vote, they've got to vote for somebody else. 9 actually now. So 9 Republicans who have voted for someone else other than Kevin McCarthy. I can tell you from my conversations with that Never McCarthy crowd for weeks leading up to this day, this is the exact scenario that they predicted, that there was enough of a grouping of lawmakers who would come out against McCarthy early on in the alphabet. We're only in the G's here, right? And essentially make it known that McCarthy would not succeed on this first ballot. And they believe, and this is where we're getting into their planning and not what has happened, but they believe that that will demonstrate to the other members in Congress that McCarthy has even less support than they thought he had as he went into this vote.
Y'all hard-headed. Matt Gaetz told you. You thought this was a bluff?
Obviously, the Never McCarthy crew wants that deal to emerge as a candidate.
This isn't AOC and the fake progressives, the fake populist lefts. This is not the same thing. That's why I've got MAGA versus the machine. I don't rock with these fake people on the left that say that they're populist left when they had the force the vote chance. You're talking about last general election. They had the force the vote chance because they could have done the same thing here. They didn't do it. That was the moment I knew, damn, they are fake. This was the moment of truth right here. And that's how I figured out Marjorie Taylor Greene is, I don't know what she's on. She's a fake. But you've seen Boebert, you've seen Matt Gaetz, and now others putting their vote where their mouth is. That's how you can tell where somebody's fake or not.
I'll give you an example. Lauren Boebert comes out today. She had been on the fence about Kevin McCarthy. She says that she's a no, or she's voting for someone else. And so that put the Never McCarthy group into the 6. Then we saw Eli Crane, who was a rep-elect, saying that he was on the fence, and he just on the floor said that he was voting no. Mike Cloud, who had not said whether he was on the fence or no or yes for McCarthy, just came out and voted for Jim Jordan. So you're seeing lawmakers who had not telegraphed where they were in this process come out against Kevin McCarthy, and I can tell you that is the exact strategy that the Never McCarthy group was hoping.
What we're going to probably see is Kevin McCarthy give up because he's hemmed up. It ain't happening. We see this? It ain't happening. There is a danger. She said that Hakeem Jeffries would not be speaker. He wouldn't be speaker. I mean, that is still a possibility. People are so confused about that. It's unlikely, but we're in dangerous ground here, which I'm perfectly fine with. Hopefully, I'm not on mute because I was muting myself. Okay, so I'm not in the business of predictions, but what I could foresee happening is you're not going to get any type of America First person as speaker. They don't have the broad appeal. They only have the power to say no, Kevin. What you might see is Jim Jordan came out and supported Kevin McCarthy. I think he did that so Kevin McCarthy would support him. That was a chess move. And Jim Jordan isn't, I mean, he's not bad. He's not great either. He's got some issues as far as where he gets his funding from. But I think he came out and supported Kevin McCarthy because they knew this was going to happen. Kevin McCarthy is going to have to step down and put his political weight behind someone else. And if I had to pick someone realistic, if I had to pick anyone, it would be, I don't know who it would be actually, but Matt Gaetz is the real leader. But I'd rather him lead committees because he's great on the committees. I like Elise Stefanik. I think she's kind of the one that could do MAGA and corporate. That's who I would pick. I'm not a Scalise guy. I'm not even really a Jim Jordan guy as far as speaker, but that'd be better. It's not McCarthy. I don't care who else. Any of the other ones are better than McCarthy. It's not McCarthy. Just stop. So McCarthy wouldn't put his political weight behind Jim Jordan if Jim Jordan had said, I'm a never McCarthy. So it looks like all roads are leading towards Jim Jordan, and I'm good with that. This is a consequence of failure of Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy, behind the scenes, wanted Trump to resign. Behind the scenes, he wanted big tech to censor the populist right. You're done. And that's beside the other stuff. You're done. So let's take a look. We're watching history.
Has everybody given a yay or a nay?
I haven't. I'm looking now at my tally here. It looks, no, we have not seen a vote of present yet. Now, what present does is if one person votes present or a couple lawmakers vote present, it changes the calculus and it changes the number of votes that Kevin McCarthy needs because it's a majority of the lawmakers.
I want to make my position clear. It's the same position during forced to vote. My position was I don't care who wins speaker outside of Nancy Pelosi. I don't care who wins speaker outside of Kevin McCarthy. That includes Hakeem Jeffries. We have to stop acting like Kevin McCarthy is different than Hakeem Jeffries. They are not. They are the same people. They just play different games. They understand everybody in the country. You have a uniparty that wants to control the populace. And they understand Hakeem Jeffries or Nancy Pelosi, it's not possible for that person to reach everyone in the world for them to resonate with. So what they do is say, we're the same team. We'll do a Nancy Pelosi. We'll do a George Bush. We'll do a Mitch McConnell. We'll do a Kevin McCarthy. So he will be a part of our team, but he will reach out to those idiots online that wear MAGA shirts. Well, you're not as dumb as you might have thought then, because the gig's up. And this is a great moment because we're seeing who's fake and who's real. And now, it only matters whenever our interests converge, you're on my team, whether it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, Trump, or Pelosi or AOC. But we are seeing that, to me, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, and the others, I still have to catch up to see who's voting where. They are the more real ones to me. Not Marjorie Taylor Greene, not Donald Trump.
Senator, what do you make of what we're witnessing today?
Well, I think the first thing is there is no joy on.
You're going to hear these leftists, they're all happy, and I'm doing the ABC feed. They are so happy and giddy because it's easy for them to present this to your normie as, look at this dysfunctional Republican Party and these maggots who are now making things chaotic when you could be doing all this stuff. They're just going to rephrase it when they had power this whole time. And they passed the Inflation Reduction Act. I guess, what is it, not going to reduce inflation? They're trying to spin this into, look at these idiots, instead of look at these populists who are really a separate party.
Say, I've given enough concessions. It's now time to get on and expect the rest of the membership to pressure the no votes or the.
There aren't any concessions that he could give. You're hard-headed. They said that there isn't any concessions. There's nothing he could have said that would say, oh, you did this and you're still speaker. No, you're fired. That's it. Matt Gaetz gave the warning way back. I talked about it way back about a month ago. It's over. I have the votes. We have the votes. Think about it now so we can figure out who it's going to be, because it's not going to be Kevin. There are no concessions.
So let's say it is Tom Cole. You know him. How would, McCarthy, just hypothetically, how would he try to make the deal?
I think he's got it. Well, how I would try and make a deal if I were Tom is I would try and figure out who are the soft nose. McCarthy. Who can I siphon off with a good logical argument? You're not going to get Matt Glantz. And if you let him be the negotiator for the never Kevin vote, you're not ever going to win. And so you've got to find a new leader of the opposition and go to them and say, okay, what's reasonable to get done here? Maybe in that case, Kevin loses 4 votes and becomes the Speaker of the House. So it's all going to be a game of inside baseball, and I'm sure Congressman Graves probably has a different perspective than I do.
What she's saying is, and this is what Kevin McCarthy will try to do, he's a cockroach. He's not going to just die. You just don't drop a nuke on him and think he's gone. He's not going to go away easy. He's going to go to all the no votes. Some of those no votes aren't America First candidates. When you look at this group of individuals here, they are the biggest egotistical sleazebags you could find in our country. That's what our politics has become. They are self-serving sleazebags. And what they are doing is being opportunistic, and they will say, oh, look at these maggots. I'm talking about Republicans. I have to look at who's doing the votes, so I'm not going to name names just yet. But some of them will be like, oh, look at these maggots. These maggots are making a move on Kevin McCarthy. I could side with them, and I could make Kevin McCarthy do something for me. I'm not really with these maggots. I'm going to make Kevin McCarthy do something for me. I never liked Kevin McCarthy, even though these corporate people have fights all the time. And this could be that opportunity where, I mean, this is a TV show we're watching right here. This is a drama. This is Game of Thrones. They could go to Kevin McCarthy and say, you remember that time you tried to do this to me, or you tried to take my donor, or you talked bad about me, or you did this? Come to my office real quick, bruh. You need my vote. Go, you know what? Before you come to my office, bring your knee pads. You might need them. That's literally how these people think. They obviously don't care about you and I, some of them.
That he's not working the room right now. I'm curious about that. Why is he not working the room? And then secondly, or thirdly, I guess, is, where does it go from here? If it's not Kevin McCarthy, I suspect that Kevin McCarthy will be the one who anoints whomever the next person might be if it comes to that.
So Tom, when you say you're surprised to not see Kevin McCarthy working the room, were you expecting to see him on the floor going member to member saying, you support me, let me just convince you right now?
Jeffries.
Well, there are a lot of that popped up, right? So you're at 9, 10, 11 votes, and you knew of 5. So surely there's 1 or 2 there that you didn't know about. I would think you might go to them and go, hey,
Stop
wait
talking.
a minute, what is this? I thought you were with me, or I didn't know. What is it I can do to comfort you in your decision to vote for me? And I haven't noticed that. He's a former whip. And, and that's one thing whips do, is that they're very active, working the floor.
They
and
missed
having
that
a
moment.
conversation and communicating.
Well, he just worked the room for a second there. He stood up and voted for himself, Tom.
He stood up and voted for himself, and all the uniparty slime, a lot of them who think he might still be speaker, which it could happen, trying to kiss up to him, his staffers and everybody, they'll know who stood up and cheered for him or not. That was a very awkward moment where he stood up, voted for himself, and then all the slime came out, the swamp creatures came out and go clapping for Kevin McCarthy.
A long time that he gets along with a lot of people. He's a well-liked guy. However, with that said, I think he might have another side to this story. I think he has definitely angered a number of people, including those within his own party, even today, throwing under the bus members of his own party. As he said, he's going to stick this out. He's going to battle it out. And even saying that members of his own party have been, quote unquote, out for themselves here. So
I got to interrupt this. Jessica Mai, you don't know how moving this comment is for me. Wow. One of my favorite comments I've ever had on this channel. Wow. This took me back in a good way. Jessica Mai says, I'm a no vote. If only the progressives would have done this. I'm a Jimmy Dore leftist. What a comment. She's a Jimmy Dore. First of all, thank you for coming by. And then she says, oh my goodness, yay. That is awesome for you guys. I'm jealous. No, really happy for you guys. Man, one of the Did not expect this. But those comments right there, wow. Because I would be in like Jimmy Dore's chat saying the same thing about the progressive left. I cannot verbalize how much that comment means to me. And I diverge from the purpose of the channel very often because I just have to do wherever I have time and wherever it takes me. That's literally the whole point of the channel. We should be on the same side on a lot of this stuff. And Jessica's putting aside all this. I'm wearing a MAGA versus the machine shirt. She didn't come in the chat talking about you stupid racists or all this other stuff. She's on the Jimmy Dore populist left. And she said, I'm happy for you guys. No matter what happens, it's a big moment. Wow. Thank you for that comment. You got to understand, that's the whole reason I did that whole MAGA communist thing. And I don't know if Jessica associates with communists. That's not what it's about. It's about taking these terms that are toxic to either side and saying, you know what? These are the toxic terms that are causing us these are the toxic terms that are causing us to overlook the many items that we agree on. Let's take these toxic terms and not throw them away. Let's actually make them the mantra. And come together and say, oh, I know I don't like the idea of communism, but if we put it together with MAGA, I understand it's not a toxic thing. I don't like MAGA, but if you put it together with communists, I understand what you're saying. So forget about the toxicity. We agree on a lot.
That's not a look the Republican Party should want. And so I think it will be interesting to see how Kevin's image is tarnished or embellished as a result of this. If he comes out victorious, I think that he'll be perceived as a stronger leader than if he had just won by one vote in this first ballot.
Tom, well-liked but not well-respected Kevin McCarthy. Do you agree with that?
Norman.
Well, I mean, there's clearly people who maybe don't like him, right? Or maybe they like him.
What did she say?
Governing leadership style, potentially. Maybe that's the best way to.
What did she say?
Opened him up to criticism from the right flank of his party. I also think that there is a sense that whatever we've done in the past didn't work, and we need new leadership. We need a new look. But if that new look.
Sorry, I'm rewinding it real quick because this anchor said something I think is crazy.
And so I think it will be interesting to see how Kevin's image is tarnished or embellished as a result of this. If he comes out victorious, I think that he'll be perceived as a stronger leader than if he had just won by one vote in this first ballot.
Tom, well-liked but not well-respected Kevin McCarthy. Do you agree with that?
What? Who said that? Politics is not about liked or not, number one. Number two, Kevin McCarthy is highly respected. These people, I don't know who's on these anchor shows, and I don't know who said that quote. That's like Nancy Pelosi. You don't think I respect Nancy Pelosi? As we're talking about her political acumen, she's one of the greatest ever. Kevin McCarthy was a young gun with Eric Cantor in them and Paul Ryan. And he's still around even through the uprising of the populist right. Every single person in that room respects Kevin McCarthy. Whether they like him or not, I don't know. I guarantee you they respect his power, his connections. When you're a whip, that means they respect you. That means you're the one that can go around and whip, figuratively, people by threatening, promising things, reminding them of stuff, and balancing all the money and all that kind of stuff. Of course they respect Kevin McCarthy. What kind of take is that? Now, if you talk about some of these random House members that you don't know, yeah, there's probably different levels of respect. Like Elise Stefanik came in, a lot of people didn't respect her. She's got more respect now, how she's navigated things. She kind of aligned with Trump. Who knows if she's real or not, but I kind of like her progression as a congresswoman. She's gained and earned respect. Marjorie Taylor Greene came in, and whether the left, they attack her, whatever, they respect how she came in. Of course they respect Kevin McCarthy. I don't even know what kind of comment that is.
Pelosi was going to have a hard time basically getting the speakership. That didn't happen. And so, or 4 years ago, this is a good day for the Democratic Party and a bad day for the GOP. We don't know how the day will end, but
that makes no sense. Why would it be a bad day for the GOP? We're in gridlock anyway. The Senate is Democrat. The House is Republican, barely. It would be, you could argue it's a bad day if Hakeem Jeffries or some other Democrat somehow became speaker. I would say it's pretty much the same. I wouldn't care. But no, this is not a bad day. Don't listen to these type of people. This is not a bad day for Republicans. Maybe it's a bad day for Republicans, but a good day for populists.
Are blooming. The Republicans will have a Republican speaker, and regardless of who that speaker is, legislation will probably be voted on bipartisan as it comes through the House to get to the president's desk for signature. So I think what we're going through now we may have a different, a lot of different things happening through the next couple of days, but the outcomes in the long term will probably be the same. That's a little bit of gridlock with a lot of bipartisan votes to get things to the president's desk.
Our John Carl tweeting out right now, Republican defections so far, 8 for Biggs, 3 for Jordan, 1 for Zeldin. Heidi, thoughts?
Zeldin.
We already heard what you thought about Andy Biggs, that would not be a good move.
I think Jim Jordan would be worse. He carries a lot of baggage, much known nationally, and a lot of national criticism. Plus, his past history will become an issue. I think that at the end of the day, if I had to predict, I think Kevin McCarthy will be speaker. The question is, what's the strength of his speakership? How does he get there? And how does he hold his caucus together afterwards when one vote could be basically a vote of no?
Okay, I can interject here. I just don't want to interject too much. Jessica, MTG voted for McCarthy. This is a great moment. We're finding out where MTG is. She's just not what I thought she was. I was wrong about her. That doesn't mean I'm going to disagree with everything she says, but she's obviously not the populist leader I thought she was. She went away on vacation and voted via proxy using the pandemic rules. The same rules that she was on with Tim Cast and she has always talked about being against. She was in Congress for a couple years, just like AOC, and I don't know if they started out honest or not, but her arc is exactly the same as AOC's right now. Very similar. And I guess I'm not ready to call MTG a fraud, but she's just not the person I thought she was. And I'm sorry, I'm not an expert on the rail worker situation. That was a big issue on the populist left. A lot of populist left people I follow. Even that girl, Casey, give her credit. She covered that, but I'm not a master on that topic, so I didn't know. Jessica, if you have time, if you're still hanging around in the chat, maybe briefly educate us about that. I'm not sure where she stood on that. But let's go. I have more stuff. I have clips and stuff, but let's go back to the news.
Yeah, that'll be a challenge. A governing majority doesn't exist. And so it'll be a battle, especially if there's a vacate the chair, rule that's in the House rules that allow 1 to 5 members to, have a vote of no confidence. Then we're back in doing this again, potentially next week or the week after. And that's not good for governing. That's really not good for policy. It's not good for the American people. So at some point it has to settle out. The question is do those detractors who are maybe 14, 15 right now, is there anything they will give? When I think about Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi went through this very same thing a few years ago, but she had those that were opposed to who were transactional. They had something of interest that, whether it was a piece of legislation or, something that helped them advocate for their cause or their position, they were willing to negotiate and work with that. It doesn't appear here that these groups have those same type of interests. They're not as transactional, not looking for better governance on behalf of themselves or something they're advocating for. it seems to be just McCarthy, and that's really hard to negotiate with. You can't change if you're Kevin McCarthy. You just can't change who you are. You got a lot to work with. That's hard to change.
Political Director Rick Klein, let's bring you in here. As the voting continues, 2 standing ovations, one for Kevin McCarthy, who voted for himself, and then, of course, Nancy Pelosi. No surprise you'd see support like that for those. We stand.
What does that tell you? The 2 people who got applause, Kevin McCarthy, Nancy Pelosi. These are the people that if you don't applaud them, that allegedly they would probably work to wreck your career.
You need to change at least 14 minds in the subsequent ballots, and there will be subsequent ballots. Also worth noting, every Democrat so far has voted for Hakeem Jeffries. None have voted present. That means you don't change the threshold. We're still looking at a magic number of 218. As of now, it looks very likely that Jeffries is going to end up with more votes than Kevin McCarthy in this first round of voting. Neither one of them, of course, is going to get to 218, but that is a statement in and of itself. This is a larger number of defections than anyone in the McCarthy camp, or frankly in some of the rebel camps that are trying to elect someone other than McCarthy, saw as plausible.
That's not true, because they don't listen to the War Room and Steve Bannon. Like, if you go to these people, nobody talked about it, but it's Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon, all the real shows that talk about these things in an authentic manner. This is not a surprise. Now, going into it, I did want to see were they going to be real about it or not, but this was talked about 14 defectors, you know, at least potentially. This was talked about even just yesterday.
Surprise, but let's just take a moment to talk about the elephant in the room. Basically makes up his resume, garnering attention for that. Now, clearly people paying attention that he voted for McCarthy. But where do things stand with George Santos at this point?
Yeah, I mean, talk about an elephant in the room. He's being treated almost like a leper in the room in some corners. Our colleague Ben Siegel reporting that he was by himself in the last row of the chamber, seated nowhere near other Republicans. That one member did come up to him at one point, Congressman Ken Calvert, but seemed to then run away pretty quickly when he realized who he was. It is going to be an interesting existence in Washington. He's already been besieged by reporters outside his office. He avoided questions on his way in, on his way around. He's going to come into contact with lots of members of Congress who don't want him there, that don't think he should be there, that are moving to refer him to the Ethics Committee or to have him expelled. But his first action, his first order of business may speak to a survival strategy, is that Kevin McCarthy really can't speak out against him, given that he needs his vote, and to other people in his conference that feel like there shouldn't be repercussions against someone for something they did when not inside the House chamber.
There was a picture of George Santos sitting all by himself, like looking on his phone or something like that. This dude, I don't even know, whoever that analyst was, said that nobody was coming up to him. He's kind of like, I don't know if you ever see like a football game, like if a kicker misses a kick or something like that, people don't usually go up to them, or if it's a pitcher that's pitching a no-hitter, nobody wants to come up. So he was by himself, like in the back, like nobody is around. He didn't even look like he was a part of the proceedings. And he said somebody came up to him and talked to him, and it seemed like he didn't know who George Santos was. And as soon as he found out who he was, he kind of hightailed it out of there. One of his staffers was probably like, I don't even know if the staffers are back there or not, but somebody, whoever walked up to George Santos, there are people probably behind George Santos being like, no, get out of here, eject.
Disappeared for a while right after the allegations came out. Finally, right around Christmas, acknowledged that he had lied about aspects of his resume. We've had more and more information exposed that is kind of head scratching.
Just to be clear about George Santos as well, I don't know why he lied about any of that stuff. I think he would have had, I don't know what the New York, it's a new district, the New York 3 district, but for me personally, it would have been a whole different thing if he would have just came out. This was my life, but here's how I'm better or whatever. Here's my takes on it, and I'm running for office. It would have hit so much differently.
At the end of the day, he more than likely is going to get the majority, and he will win.
Rashida Tlaib, the fake progressive back there laughing.
Covering Kevin McCarthy, do you think he's lost more respect over time, especially when he has associated himself so tightly with the former president? Donald
That's
Trump?
one of the interesting things about all of this, Kira, is that Kevin McCarthy, in some ways, saw a challenge like this coming and made that fateful decision right after the inauguration of Joe Biden, when Donald Trump was disgraced and in exile and impeached for a second time. He made that trip to Mar-a-Lago, calculating that he needed the MAGA movement, that he needed the Trump.
This is BS from these people. Kevin McCarthy came out and he was looking around to see if he could put pressure on Trump to resign while he was already at the end of his term. And yeah, after all that, he tried to come back to MAGA because it was like, damn, Kevin McCarthy thought that J6 was going to be an event that forced Trump out of the circle, like he would be done. And so these people don't really understand MAGA. And so he thought like that was my time to push him out. Mitch McConnell thought it was too. And Kevin McCarthy quickly found out, ooh, this ain't going to go that way. So he had to go back and kiss up to MAGA people. So Kevin McCarthy's not MAGA. But I do want to say with Trump, this is another loss. This is an L for Trump. Trump supported this dude for speaker. What do you want me to do? I mean, people on the channel like, oh, you don't support Trump. That's not really it. I'm going to point out when this dude is off. And I never was going to vote. Well, I was open to voting for Trump, but my first pick was always the libertarian comic Dave Smith if he announces. But I was going to give Trump a chance. But you can't ignore this kind of buffoonery. Trump supported this guy for speaker, and he first time in like 100 years, populist movement wants to get him out. Where is Trump at? Like, where does he even fit in this anymore? He doesn't. He still should have a voice. He's still important, but obviously he's that grandpa. Like, he shouldn't be in the football game. It would be like Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice is one of the greatest, smoothest receivers of all time. It would be like Jerry Rice right now putting on the number 80 jersey and getting in a game. That's not to diss what he is and how great he was and Hall of Fame status, but you would be like, Jerry, it's over. What are you doing? That's where Trump is. And that's why when I wear MAGA, it had nothing to do with Trump. It's way bigger than Trump. Bad day for Trump. I don't know why they're not going down that route. It's a terrible day for Trump.
I'm the where are we now in the alphabet guy. We're in the W's. We're just about to wrap up the first ballot here. And let me just look at my running tally in case anyone's voted. In the meantime, we've got 19 Republicans who have, at this juncture, have voted against Kevin McCarthy. That is far more than the 5 Never McCarthy Republicans that emerged after the election. That's more than the Republicans that said that they were on the fence, plus the 5 Never McCarthy Republicans. So we've seen some voting against McCarthy who have emerged just during this floor vote. Again, 19 Republicans saying that they will not vote for Kevin McCarthy. He can only afford to lose 4 Republicans. So this is a tough place for him. And
so let's get caught up on some of the comments. Jessica, thank you for these comments here. Jessica says she actually loves Bannon. I think it's BS that he's racist. You know, people call him racist. I've watched probably every speech of his in Europe, etc. He is badass. See, if we had these type of takes, I wouldn't even say populist right or left anymore. We'd just say populist. That's when you have these type of takes, then we could just drop the left and right and just say populist. Jessica was following the rail workers strike, and that was a big blind spot for me. Jessica says that MTG voted no to sick days and yes for forced back to work. Gates did too, but I like he's still pushing for the speaker thing. So my next question, because I'm not knowledgeable here, is what's the pros and cons? Obviously, I would like to default to the sick days and on the side of the workers, but I just want to know what the pros and cons, what are they potentially debating there? I just don't know. So Jessica's taking over the chat, but if you do have time, that's Hakeem Jeffries there shaking hands. I don't know all the names of these Congress. There's a lot of new faces. But if you do have time, Jessica, what's the argument against sick days for the railroad workers? I don't know what the argument is.
He would need 6 Republicans, potentially even 7, to switch over his side. So as of right now, there's very...
If you don't know, Hakeem Jeffries here. Hakeem Jeffries is the new rising star. He is the pick from Nancy Pelosi. She was the one that always kind of brought him up as the new her. So when she is out and doesn't have power, she will have somebody who is beholden to her, and she will still be running things even after she retires, in my opinion. But I believe she's still running, right? She did that Full House announcement that she was running again. She's not going to be speaker, obviously, but oh, is that Jim Jordan? There we go. That's Jim Jordan and Kevin McCarthy. And now this is exactly what I talked about. I don't know what they're saying, but this is what the natural, all roads would lead to. Oh, Kevin McCarthy doesn't look. I'm just looking at their faces. Yeah, this is a serious discussion. Is that somebody's kid there? These are serious discussions here. Now Kevin McCarthy's doing the fake smile thing again. I don't know what they talked about. It was out in the open, so it's probably nothing big too deep. But Kevin McCarthy, Jim Jordan supported Kevin McCarthy. At first, I was kind of surprised, but now it makes sense. Kevin McCarthy probably has a backup plan. It'll be Jim Jordan, in my opinion, if it's not Kevin McCarthy. Now, this is the chance to kiss up. You know, if you're a new congressperson, I don't know a lot of these people here. There's so many people in the House. It's 435 of them to recognize all of them. But yeah, let's listen to the coverage.
Majority of the members of the House to vote to take a break, because the first thing that the House of Representatives does is elect their speaker. The next thing they do is agree to the rules that the House will be governed under. So right now, there's no rules. It's the Wild West. It's the Thunderdome. You have to have a majority to do anything. So you have to have, at least has been explained to me by former people who were involved in the House process, that you need a majority to vote to take a break. So you go ballot after ballot after ballot until there's some kind of an agreement to take a break.
Oh, wow.
So right now we're seeing kind of that interval between the votes, but at least if they stay with the procedure that's been described to me and that they did, 100 plus years ago, or 100 years ago exactly, they will go right into another ballot. But here's the other question, Kira, which is, so much of this is uncharted territory, which is why I'm hedging a little bit on what happens next, because the House has not had to confront this for exactly 100 years. The last time we had multiple ballots for Speaker, 1923, exactly 100 years ago. The most ballots we've ever had for Speaker was 133 in the 1800s. That took 2 months to elect a Speaker of the House. So while there is precedent for going in on multiple ballots and figuring it out, a lot of this is uncharted waters for the members standing on that floor.
Okay, so I'm going to go in and out of the coverage here. Turns out to be, for me, a more exciting day than I expected. I do have a clip that I'll go to here real quick and then go to the comments. Marjorie Taylor Greene had a regrettable moment, in my opinion. And here she is. This is via Patriot Takes. And if you know the channel, I'm not a fan of Patriot Takes, but I do follow them. They do pull up clips that are relevant. I've very much often quote tweeted, replied under their stuff. I mean, they're into politics. So here we go. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Unhinged.
You know why I'm upset? Because Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, and Scott Perry, the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, walked in Kevin McCarthy's office last night and made their own personal demands for which subcommittee chairmanships they want to have and who they want on committees and who they want taken off committees. And guess what? The chairman of the Freedom Caucus negotiated nothing for me. Nothing for me. And I'll back this up even further. I read text messages. From these people.
But hang on. But this wasn't personal. This wasn't. Hang on. Go ahead.
No, I really need to say this. People need to understand that this is one vote. Do you know where all the fights really are? We have to get to 218 on every single bill we pass. We have to get to 218 to actually make anything happen on the House floor. And out of 222 members, that is practically impossible. That's where my power is. That's where every single conservative has power, is with our voting card. And if anyone thinks This is the hill to die on. They are absolutely wrong, because every single bill that we have to go in there, we have to fight for conservative principles. We have to fight for America first on these bills. And that is what I am dedicated to do. It's not about the person we put in there as speaker. It's about fighting for the right things for our country. And that is exactly what I'm going to do, Steve.
I just want to make sure, but Gates, Perry, and Boebert on the meeting last night, if this was what was explained at the conference, weren't answering for themselves personally. They had very specific recommendations on subcommittee chairs, committee chairs, etc. But they were putting that forward as and specific names, including people that would join you on the Rules Committee, that very specific names that they felt would give a more conservative.
I've said I've put in every single one of us, Steve, every member of Congress, we get to fill out a form and write on the form which committees we would like. I just made my request like everyone else. I didn't go in someone's office and get behind closed doors and demand this is what I want in order for me to vote for you. I didn't do that.
Ooh, so you can see that Marjorie Taylor Greene's not in a good spot. My takeaway from this here, and I'm going to go back to the coverage. I don't know. I have no idea what they're going to do next. But my takeaway from this is Marjorie Taylor Greene miscalculated this thing. She spent too much time, in my opinion. There's this clip where she kind of did a little sneak diss on Carrie Lake. Was it Carrie Lake? I think it was on Carrie Lake, in my opinion, where she said, I think Carrie Lake should be fighting to be the governor for Arizona and not worried about national. Same with DeSantis, because I think it's obvious she wants to be the VP pick for Trump. And she's let all that stuff go to her head. She's not the same person that kind of won me over, because at first I wasn't really, I didn't really rock with her like that. I thought she was good, but then she won me over. And she's not the same person. She's too focused on her aspirations. She has not disagreed with Trump, because on this, obviously, Matt Gaetz, Boebert, Perry, Gibbs, Gosar, name them all, they disagree with Trump on Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. Marjorie Taylor Greene does not. Why? Because I think she wants to be VP. And what she did was put those aspirations above the will of the people. Matt Gaetz, Boebert, they stayed closer, Gosar, closer to the will of the people. So now when they went in to meet with McCarthy, I don't know what happened. I don't think they asked for any special concessions. I think they said the only concession was you're not going to get the votes. So what do you want to do after that? That's my opinion. It was a very brief meeting. There's a clip of Matt Gaetz after it. He said no right after the meeting. It's not Kevin McCarthy. So I don't know what Marjorie Taylor Greene's coming back. She says she had text messages, but the bottom line is she spent too much time with Trump, too much time worrying about VP, in my opinion, and not enough with her colleagues and where the people are. She was also supporting Santos. I mean, these takes are just so awful. And I don't know where Gaetz is on Santos and that, but that's what happened. She was focused on the wrong things, and the people that she should have been glued with on the same page. Obviously, she's not on the same page with Boebert. You came up with that beef with Boebert and all that. That stuff should have been squashed. You don't have to like each other. The cabal, they don't like each other. They all don't like each other. You think everybody likes Nancy Pelosi? No, they kiss the ring when they have to, and then behind their back, they talk about her being a witch. You make up with Boebert. You need to be on the same page with them. Matt Gaetz, that's your power. You separated from that. They separated from you. They kind of backpedal. Matt Gaetz has been cool with her the whole time. So if you fell out with Matt Gaetz, that's on you. Let's go back and see what's going on. But that was an important clip I wanted to bring up. And then I'm going to go back to the chat after I get this video pumping back up here. This is ABC's news feed. Let me see if I can get that pumping.
They had hoped to take the gavel immediately after the first ballot. That will not.
So as you can see, Hakeem Jeffries would be speaker if he had 218 votes, period. It's just so, I don't know why this was such a big debate with forced to vote. Yes, it was possible for Kevin McCarthy to be speaker. That's a fact. You see it right here. However it happens, If Jeffries had 218, he would be speaker, period. So that is a possibility.
Happen. The voting will continue this afternoon. He faces an uphill battle within his own party, a select few against him, but enough of them to keep him from getting the votes he needed, at least in this first round of voting, this first ballot. Leader McCarthy had spent the morning behind closed doors trying to secure the 218 votes needed to become the next speaker and to avoid having to go to another round, another ballot, which he was not able to do a short time ago. And we should point out that in not doing so, he has made history. The last time the vote for speaker had to go past the first ballot was some 100 years ago. McCarthy, who already moved into the speaker's office, rejecting some of the latest demands from some hardline conservative members of the Freedom Caucus.
I forgot the name of this anchor, but he is a very good anchor. This the other feed I had a terrible. He is a very, very good. Obviously, won't agree, but he keeps his opinion out of it for the most part. Real quick, Brandy. Yes, Hakeem Jeffries could become speaker. That is a possibility. It's unlikely, but it's possible.
He did make some major concessions, hoping to sway his critics, including making it easier to remove him from the position if he's elected. Republicans have a razor-thin majority in the House. McCarthy could only afford to lose some 4 votes from his party. He lost far more than that by the end of the first ballot. And in fact, Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat, the leader for the Democrats in the House, actually surpassing McCarthy. That also makes history. It's the first time the party not in power in the House actually leads at the end of a ballot for the Speaker of the House. Of course, that's just the first. You need to get a majority in the House in order to be named Speaker. And so they will continue to do multiple rounds of voting until there is a Speaker. It's believed that will be Kevin McCarthy. But again,
we're in uncharted territory, so it could be, but I'm not going to believe that. Jessica replied to the railroad comment and said the railroad sick days, the Congress is saying this is what the union wanted. The union is corrupt. The bottom line is oligarchs like Warren Buffett telling the government what to do. It's complex. Wow. That's deep. So I don't know. I'm not familiar with that union, but I have a problem with unions if they take political sides. So I don't know about that union. But yeah, unions throw a wrench into things and could pose problems. And that's what Brandy just said here. Yep, unions. I don't know about the railroad unions. I'm just saying in general. I've talked about some like the SEIU. I think I just talked about that with the janitors and Elon Musk in a previous video. Unions pump the money, dues and all right to the Democrat Party. So that's where I disagree with the populist left on unions a little bit. If they are political, they are a problem. And Trujillo said, and this is why the squad lost their power. They could have held the Democrats accountable and forced the vote on universal health care. Absolutely. They could have forced it on whatever they wanted to. Absolutely. Now, I understand the debate on the populist left, like what would the vote on universal health care mean? Some people thought it would just put it on record where people stood. But if you wanted to be a fake progressive, you could still vote for universal health care knowing it wouldn't pass. So my thought on force the vote was more get Nancy Pelosi out of there. But that's a dangerous thing. Nancy Pelosi is so powerful. You know, that I will say they had a harder road to climb, even though they had more members on their side, because Nancy Pelosi is a much bigger monster than Kevin McCarthy, as good as he is. Jessica says they threatened the squad that McCarthy would be speaker if they voted no on Pelosi. That's how they got him in line. Yes. And Jimmy Dore was wrong on this, Jessica. I got ratioed on this channel. I got a lot of heat, and I dropped it because it wasn't the important argument at the time. I bring it up now because it is important now. Because at the time I was like, okay, let me not argue about the Kevin McCarthy thing, even though I know I'm right, because that's not the big picture. The big picture is they should force the vote for whatever they want. But Jessica, do we agree Jimmy was wrong on that? Obviously, Kevin McCarthy, it was possible for him to become speaker. But let's go back. I think they might be breaking away because it's Congress. They got to take breaks and lots. They don't do much but fake smile and call their donors, to be honest with you. Let's see where they're at. They're probably going to be ending this coverage shortly.
The fact that we are even going to a second speaker ballot is absolutely historic. The last time the House did this was in the 1920s, 1923. Exactly 100 years ago did we have a Speaker of the House ballot go into multiple ballots. The longest this ever took was in the 1850s. It took 2 months.
Wait and see, it's historic, but why? He never says why it's historic.
Times where you had really lengthy, protracted Speaker of the House battles, the country was marching towards civil war. It was in the 1850s. And so the fact that we're going to another Speaker of the House battle, again, it happened sometimes after that. It happened in 1923. But it's a history-making moment, the likes of which the modern House of Representatives has not seen. There is nobody on that floor right now. There is nobody in Congress who was around the last time we went into 2 Speaker of the House battles. So when we talk about the rules, the reality is there's not many members in there who may know the rules or have read in on the fact that, you know, who knows what happens after you miss the first ballot with Speaker. We do know, or we are hearing that a second ballot is coming perhaps soon. It appears soon. And then we will see if there's been any deliberations, any whipping of votes in this time between the ballots, if McCarthy allies were able to get with some of those never McCarthy lawmakers, or even the lawmakers who opposed McCarthy on the first ballot, but who might be malleable. Again, McCarthy can only afford to lose 4 Republicans if everybody who voted on the first ballot comes back and votes on the second ballot. Those are the rules of the House. And right now, he lost 19 Republicans, so he significantly has his work cut out for him. It's worth pointing out again, just in terms of clarification, even though Hakeem Jeffries is beating Kevin McCarthy in votes, he'd have to flip Republicans to his side to become the next Speaker of the House. You're not elected by the majority of votes on the floor there. You're not elected by the number of votes cast. You're elected by the majority of lawmakers voting on the floor. So anyone who wants to be the next Speaker needs 218. Hakeem Jeffries' path to 218 is non-existent. Kevin McCarthy's path to 218, despite the fact that his party is in control of the House of Representatives.
So this is Kevin McCarthy with the fake smiles and showing strength. Look who's over here, right here. Jim Jordan, right by him. So you're going to see these two close together a lot. And it's not impossible for Hakeem Jeffries to get Republicans to flip. That's not impossible. It just depends. I haven't looked at the map. But if you're talking about Republicans that would be clapping for Kevin McCarthy, if you were to talk to them off the record, they'd be fine with Hakeem Jeffries. Most of them. So it's not impossible. I don't agree with that. Because we're in uncharted territory.
Is a lot rockier than he.
I mean, if Liz Cheney was in the House, you don't think she would support Hakeem Jeffries? Of course she would. If she had to. She would prefer McCarthy, but if she had to, she would pick. If she had to, I don't know if she would pick him over Jim Jordan. It's possible because out of principle, not even about Jim Jordan, Liz Cheney wouldn't want Matt Gaetz and others to be able to come back and say, we at least did a little bit of accountability for somebody who was at fault for the red wave not happening, at fault for not holding the Democrats accountable for the influx of people coming through the border, pandemic, all those other things. Liz Cheney would rather not Matt Gaetz get the win. I think she would absolutely vote for Hakeem Jeffries.
And as we're watching live pictures, Jay, Kevin McCarthy back on the floor now. And just a few moments ago, we still saw the clerk there that is formally counting up all the votes that were cast and has yet to announce the total breakdown. So I think that might be what we're waiting for before we enter that second round of voting. So, you know, you've brought this up. Rachel has brought this up, the fact that Kevin McCarthy spent most of the morning behind closed doors trying to secure the 200.
We've got our first Yay 24 reference of the day. So whenever somebody comes in the chat and references Yay 24, I'm like, here's the first reference. It's, believe it or not, it is not as crazy as you might have thought when it first happened. All this kind of stuff is making people go towards Yay 24, believe it or not, at least from what I'm seeing. I'm seeing more and more people just typing Yay 24. And then the sentiment is like Wayne Allen here, who says, Jim Jordan basically compromised. Same sentiment as John Chisholm saying all these jokers don't care about us. They just want to fill their evil pockets. That sentiment right there takes people away from Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, all them. And I don't know who else could run. It does funnel people to Yay 24, believe it or not. I don't know what other option there would be to run. Maybe I want Jimmy Dore to run. But
nobody on the Republican side has anywhere near as many votes as he does, and certainly none of those that got votes in this first round. But how he convinces those 19, and make no mistake, 19 is a big number.
So they're trying to say, well, Kevin McCarthy got the vast, and there's Chip Roy there, and Matt Gaetz right here. They're trying to say that's Lauren Boebert. You're seeing Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz, I think that's Lauren Boebert, rolling together as a kind of a duo. What this analyst is saying is Kevin McCarthy has the most votes, so there's no one. He's kind of intimating that there's no one else who has a chance. Not true. That's just not true. What they're doing is making a move saying it's not you, Kevin. So we know you've got the most votes, but it will continue to be not you, even when the daisies start coming up through the ground for springtime, until you put your weight behind somebody else. And that's where you'll see Jim Jordan. So don't get twisted. It doesn't matter that he has all the votes now. If they flip him and say, Kevin McCarthy says, don't vote for me anymore, these people got me hemmed up, vote for Jordan, then it will flip.
Defections, it's significantly more than he had anticipated. I'd also like to point out one other key factor here, Kira, that has not really been talked about much yet. McCarthy had a major Republican figure in his corner who had endorsed him publicly and who had made calls on his behalf to convince defectors to vote for him. That big Republican figure is Donald Trump. These people didn't listen to Trump. I mean, this defections came from the Trump wing of the party, to be sure, and they didn't give a damn that Donald Trump came out publicly and said, vote for Kevin McCarthy.
Rachel, you were the first one, actually, to grab Kevin McCarthy.
You hear how crazy they're like, oh, my gosh, Donald Trump said vote for Kevin McCarthy, and they didn't listen to him. They think this is some type of cult. So what did Donald Trump said vote for Kevin McCarthy? What does that have to do with anything? You thought Donald Trump was like some cult leader? That's him realizing, oh, my gosh, it's not a cult. I thought it was a cult. It's not a cult.
Dig in, and he will fight. He will dig in, and he will let this voting go ballot after ballot after ballot, because he knows that nobody on the Republican side has anywhere near as many votes as he does, and certainly none of those that got votes in this first round. But how he convinces those 19, and make no mistake, 19 is a big number of defections. It's significantly more than he had anticipated. I'd also like to point out one other key factor.
What do you want to point out?
That has not really been talked about.
What's that?
McCarthy had a major Republican figure in his corner who
Who's
had
that?
endorsed him publicly and who had made calls on his behalf to convince defectors to vote for him. That big Republican figure is Donald Trump.
Okay.
These people didn't listen to Trump. I mean, this defections came from the Trump wing of the party, to be sure.
Oh, so maybe you should stop trying to do the Trump wing of the party and just say the populist wing of the party. You dumbass. Maybe that's where you're wrong. You call it Trumpism, the Trump wing. That's you trying to make it a cult when it was never that. It's the populist wing that respects Trump, of course, but it's not a Trump wing of the party.
And they didn't give a damn that Donald Trump came out publicly and said, vote for Kevin McCarthy.
No, just like when he said, vote for Dr. Oz, nobody gave a damn. No, just like when he says, support Ronna McDaniel, nobody gives a damn. Your assessment of what's happening, you are a paid analyst, but you are a clown. You don't know what's happening. So you don't have anybody on these major networks that have any understanding, or maybe they do understand, but that seemed authentic to me. They don't understand what's happening. That's what happens when you don't have diversity. And what I mean true diversity in the truest sense. If you had somebody next to him that was a populist figure like a Steve Bannon or somebody who understands what's happening, they would explain to him that Donald Trump doesn't rule this thing with like some magic wand. What did you think was happening here?
Rachel, you were the first one, actually, of his own party under the bus. As Rachel was reporting and you were talking, behind closed doors, it was the same type of behavior, which sort of reminds you of Donald Trump. He did not like it if you didn't like him or didn't do what he wanted you to do. Boy, he let you know. And he many times did it publicly, or he did it on Twitter. So how much, John, do you think McCarthy's relationship with Donald Trump has played into this historic moment on the floor today?
I think it's central. I think it's absolutely central. He had a very close relationship with Trump when Trump was in the White House. You remember I described a walk I took with Kevin McCarthy around the National Mall on January 2nd, just days before the January 6th attack on the Capitol, where I was asking him if he was going to stand up and finally come forward and say, you know what, Joe Biden won the election. We've got to put this stuff aside. McCarthy did not do that. He chose another path, which was to really do everything possible to placate Donald Trump, to do basically, to show himself as the guy that would stand there and be loyal to the president, now the former president. One small exception, one exception that really only lasted a few days, is when he stood up and he said that Trump bore responsibility for January 6th. But he made a calculation that there was no way that he could become Speaker of the House unless he was seen as absolutely and totally loyal to Donald Trump. And guess what? That failed. He got Trump's support, and it didn't matter. And you wonder, and I'm sure McCarthy is now wondering this himself, about the path not taken. If he had stood up and he said what I firmly believe he believed about the election, and he had not done all he did to placate Donald Trump, to go down to see him at Mar-a-Lago just weeks after January 6th, you wonder what would have happened. Because what we have seen here is Republicans are willing to stand up and defy Donald Trump, including his most fervent supporters, stand up and survive. So I think Trump is central to all of this. McCarthy took a path, and that path has led to this day.
So we could see Kevin McCarthy reciting Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken, and sort of looking at what maybe he should have done, could have done. Rachel, do you want to weigh in on that as well?
I just love the fake smiles. He's not feeling that happy. He's just fake smiling, shaking hands. These people are so phony.
Well, just the relationship between McCarthy and Trump and how it's played into all of this and what you've observed and what you've heard from your sources, those that are not supporting Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, Kira, well, as John was talking, I was really thinking about the tale of two chambers that we are seeing play out. Sure, the House has all the drama today, but it's also the start of the new Congress. So over in the Senate, you have a different leader, Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, who, as you remember, was very blunt in condemning former President Donald Trump. After January 6th, he has been very blunt about his role in having a very small majority and placing the blame on Trump for a lot of what unfolded and what was a disappointing midterm for Republicans, and still he was elected as the minority leader of that party. And so I think that you do see these two different strategies playing out in these chambers as Republicans are trying to figure out what their path forward is.
I mean, it was extraordinary. I'm sure you remember, Kira, when not all that long ago, I asked McCarthy, I think it was like 4 or 5 times, is Joe Biden the legitimate president of the United States? Did he legitimately win the 2020 election? And he would not give me an answer to that. He would say he lives in the White House. He is president, which are facts that we know. But he wouldn't say whether or not he won that election, won that office legitimately. And again, because he was afraid of doing anything to get crossways with Donald Trump. And I mean, I know that Kevin McCarthy knows and believes that the election was free and fair in 2020, but he couldn't step up and say that publicly.
So then okay, I think we're going to, all right, John, Rachel, stay with us. We're going to go ahead and listen in on the floor again.
I don't know what's going on here. We're probably going to set up the second ballot. We're in unprecedented territory in the history. Well, I believe it has happened before, actually, but in 100 years is what they were saying. Might need a little heavier gavel.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order.
Okay, get it together.
The House will be in order. The tellers agree in their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 434, of which the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212. The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 203. The Honorable Andy Biggs of the state of Arizona has received 10.
Wow.
The Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 6.
Jim Jordan right there, Elise
The
Stefanik.
Honorable Jim Banks of the state of Indiana has received 1. The Honorable Lee Zeldin of the state of New York has received 1.
He's not in the House.
Donalds of the state of Florida has received 1. No persons having received a majority of the whole number of votes cast by surname, a speaker has not been elected. Following the procedure used by the House in 1923 and recorded in Canon's Precedents, Volume 6, Section 24, the clerk is prepared to direct the reading clerk to call a roll anew. For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
What's going on here?
I rise to nominate Kevin McCarthy for Speaker of the House.
Elise Stefanik is clapping. Steve Scalise. Whoa.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I think we have 3 objectives this Congress. 3 fundamental things we have to get done in the 118th Congress. First, pass the bills that fix the problems. In 2 years' time, we have a border that is no longer a border. We have a military that can't meet its recruitment goals.
There are no bills
we
passing.
have bad energy policy, bad education policy, record spending, record inflation, record debt, and a government that has been weaponized against we the people, against the very people we represent.
No significant bill is going to pass.
So we need to pass legislation to address all that.
So stop.
And I hope my Democrat colleagues will join me.
That's a failure.
I really do.
No.
But I have my doubts. And if they don't, and if Chuck Schumer says, no, we're not going to take up that legislation that we pass, and if Joe Biden won't sign it, so be it. They'll have to answer to the people in 2024. Second, we can never, ever let a bill like the one that passed 12 days ago,
Yeah.
$1.7 trillion spent, we can never, ever let that kind of legislation pass again.
Agreed.
We have to pass a budget that makes sense, that's good common sense, then do the 12 appropriation bills that recognize it's the people's money, not ours, and send it to the Senate, and then stand firm on that legislation. And again, if they won't take it up and Joe Biden won't sign it, we can stand firm on a CR or something. We can have that fight, but we are not going to have what took place a week and a half ago ever happen again. And then finally, third, and this is important, we got to do the oversight, do the investigations. We have to do the oversight and the investigations that need to be done. This idea that bureaucrats who never put their name on a ballot but think they run the country, who have assaulted our constituents' First Amendment liberties, they need to be held accountable. That has to happen. We need to do it.
Agreed. So then why don't we compromise and make Jim Jordan speaker? Sounds like we figured it out, Jim.
We need to do it in a way that's consistent with the Constitution, but we need to do it vigorously and aggressively. That is part of our duty as members of this body. To my friends here on this side of the aisle, I would just say this. The differences we may have, the differences between Joyce and Jordan or Biggs and Bacon, they pale in comparison to the differences between us and the left, which now unfortunately controls the other party. So we had better come together and fight for these key things, these three things. That's what the people want us to do. And I think Kevin McCarthy is the right guy to lead us. I really do, or I wouldn't be standing up here giving this speech. I came in with Kevin. We came in the same time 16 years ago. We haven't always agreed on everything, but I like his fight. I like his tenacity, and I like the. I remember Kevin told me, I actually wrote about this in a book. I remember Kevin told me, he said, when the toughest times in life are when you get knocked down, the question is, can you come back? And I've always seen him be able to do that. We need to rally around him, come together, and deal with these three things, because this is what the people sent us here to do. My favorite scripture verse is 2 Timothy 4:7. Paul's the old guy giving advice to the young guy, and he says, fight the good fight, finish the course, keep the faith. I like the verse because it's a verse of action. Fight, finish, keep. Not wimpy words, words that I think fit America. That's what the American people want us to do. They want us to fight for the things they care about and they elected us to do. And we should all remember, only about 12,000 people have ever had the opportunity to do what we're doing today, sit in this body, serve in this Congress. It is a privilege. It is an opportunity. We owe it to them, the American people, the good people of this great country, to step forward, to come together, get a speaker elected so we can address these three things. I hope you'll vote for Kevin McCarthy, and that's why I'm proud to nominate him for Speaker of the House.
I still don't think I believe it. I still think it's a play for Jim Jordan to be the Speaker of the House.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're witnessing history here today. For half of that, I wasn't quite sure who the gentleman from Ohio was nominating. He was nominating himself. And
is the gentleman rising to place a name in nomination?
I am, Madam Clerk.
Wait, we can throw shade too? Woo, getting spicy.
I'd like to be afforded the same opportunity that the gentleman from Ohio took.
Yeah. What's going on here?
Consider all that's happened. The last time an election for Speaker went to a second ballot, Leader Jeffries' beloved New York Yankees had not yet won a World Series. Consider all that's happened since then. The work that the body has entertained, the work that we've done for the people over that time. We are unified behind a speaker who will continue that progress despite the chaos on the other side, Madam Clerk. We are going to stay here to get this done. We are unified, and we are all going to support Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker, the lead vote getter in the last ballot. Madam Clerk, as chair of the Democratic Caucus, I'm directed by the vote of the caucus to present for election to the office of Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 118th Congress the name of the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, the representative-elect for the state of New York, once again, and we will be unified once again in our support for him.
And there he is right there.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Uh-oh.
To nominate a candidate for Speaker of the House.
Let's go.
The gentleman is recognized.
Well, sometimes we have to do jobs that we don't really want to do. And sometimes we have to do jobs that we are called to do. And so, my colleagues, I rise to nominate the most talented, hardest working member of the Republican Conference, who just gave a speech with more vision than we have ever heard from the alternative. I'm nominating Jim Jordan.
So you see
Jim
it?
Jordan is
There it is.
humble.
There it is.
Perhaps today, humble to a fault. Maybe the right person for the job of Speaker of the House isn't someone who wants it so bad. Maybe the right person for the job of Speaker of the House isn't someone who has sold shares of themselves for more than a decade to get it.
Well, Jim has too a little bit, but not for
Maybe
speaker.
Jim Jordan is the right person for Speaker of the House because he is not beholden to the lobbyists and special interests who have corrupted this place and corrupted this nation under the leadership of both Republicans and Democrats.
That's not true.
Maybe Jim Jordan would be the right person for Speaker of the House because he wouldn't fight us when we try to get a term limits bill on the floor. Maybe Jim Jordan would be the right person because he wouldn't fight us when we try to put a balanced budget on the floor and vote for it. And maybe Jim Jordan is the right person because he would endorse the plan that was built by the Texas delegation to finally secure our border. Mr. Jordan said in his nomination that there are certain bills that we have to pass to fix the problem. The challenge is the alternative has been someone voting for the very bills that have caused these problems.
Yep.
Mr. Jordan says that we cannot accept legislation like the omnibus, and I fully agree. And if Jim Jordan were Speaker of the House, if he were the leader of the Republican team, we wouldn't have that circumstance choking the economy of our country, increasing inflation, and diminishing the prospects of a better life for our fellow Americans. And finally, Mr. Jordan said we must engage in rigorous oversight. Every one of my Republican colleagues knows that the person who can lead that oversight effort, who works on it every day, who has the skill and the talent and the will, is Jim Jordan. I'm nominating him, and I'm voting for him.
Ooh-wee.
The reading clerk will call the roll.
Jim Jordan is, in my opinion, is in on this.
Sure.
That wasn't on an existential.
And notice Matt Gaetz isn't trying to pick some himself or Lauren Boebert as speaker. He's picking someone that can get support from corporate and America First candidates. So it's a fair push. He's not asking for too much. I really do think that Jim Jordan is in on this, though. Really good, smart stuff. But Kevin McCarthy, if he is, Kevin McCarthy would know that, too. But I think Kevin McCarthy would say, I could support Jim Jordan. It's just embarrassing for him.
Jeffries.
So this is going through the boring vote again. I'll have that in the background.
McCarthy.
Exciting stuff here. We got a little spice on the floor.
Alford. McCarthy.
They literally have to go through the and they have to my knowledge, there's no you have to be there. This isn't a like I can zoom in type of thing.
Jeffries.
I haven't seen Marjorie Taylor Greene on the coverage yet, though. I saw Lauren Underwood there for a second, the Illinois 14, I believe.
McCarthy. Armstrong.
So I'm hoping that the coverage will show if anybody switches. This is ABC, not C-SPAN, so they should have people doing commentary.
McCarthy. Auchincloss.
So while this, the boring vote goes through, and I don't know how many times they do this in a day, or I mean, technically we are in the place.
Bacon.
Let me turn the volume down a little bit.
Baird.
Technically we are in the place where, to my knowledge, they would have to do this over and over, and they can't do anything other than this until it is.
Jeffries.
Wow, that was unhinged.
Banks. McCarthy. Barr.
So they can't vote by proxy because there's no rules anymore. The pandemic rules are done right now until if they reinstate them, if they want to.
Dean of Florida.
So this is your tax dollars at work.
Jeffries.
She's like, girl, I need all that. What was that?
McCarthy.
If you couldn't hear, some Democrat was like, for the second time, I proudly, like, we don't need all that. Just say his name. Like, we already went through the theatrics. These people are so drama influenced. Let's look at the comments here. I do have some segments. I'm scared to pull away. Yeah. So Wayne Allen, I agree. I wouldn't call him a rhino, but I do agree. I don't fully trust him. He's got money from big tech. But the point here, Matt Gaetz doesn't have the pull to get an America First type, whatever you want to label that. Let's say him. He wouldn't put himself out there like that, but he couldn't get somebody like himself to be speaker. So the point is, there has to be some type of price to pay, just like Ronna McDaniel. It's no different than the Ronna McDaniel argument. There has to be. It's not like this is a personal thing. It's not like we don't respect you. It's not like we hate you personally. You have failed at your job, and we're not going to let you continue to have power. So even if we have to swap you out for another creature of the swamp, that's what's going to happen. That sends at least whatever, that extends the power that they have as far as they can. So I fully support Matt Gaetz going to Jim Jordan, even though I agree Jim Jordan is not some perfect, great person. So we just got to vote for Jim Jordan right there. Jessica Mai says, interesting. Thanks for streaming it. Thank you for coming by. This is very interesting. Jordan, nice for you to come by. I haven't seen in a minute. Jordan Lott says, libertarians should run Justin Amash for Speaker of the House. Then they should run Jesse Ventura, Dave Smith 24, bring back liberty. Man, nobody's comments make me smile every single time more than Jordan Lott. Now, there's no libertarians that would do that. So, but yes, I love that. But I do like that comment, though. And I like Jesse Ventura. I like Dave Smith. Justin Amash, I'm not as big on, but better than a lot of the ones we have currently.
Jeffries. Brownlee. Jeffries. Buchanan.
So I'm going to stay just in case we hear some breaking news. I'd hate to break away I do have a couple segments about deep stuff with the pandemic, and then also DeSantis. I have those prepared, so I could jump to those at any moment.
Budzinski. Jeffries.
I don't hear any commentary, though.
Burchett.
So I'm wondering if I should switch.
Burgess. McCarthy.
I'm going to switch feeds.
McCarthy.
Because I want to know in real time if somebody switched.
Calvert. McCarthy. Kamek. McCarthy.
I'm still looking to see if there's another feed with commentary.
Jeffries.
Bloomberg.
Jeffries.
I'm just going to stay here.
Cardenas.
First Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Kerry. McCarthy. Carl.
If you go back to your childhood, and think about the brown nosers that you might have had in your class, that's what we have right here. And not just that, they're very ego on top of that, cutthroat. It's just a group of those type of people, the brown nosers in your corporate environment or class, the best brown nosers of the brown nosers. It's like if the NFL did a draft going back to elementary school, middle school, high school, college, corporate environment, draft the most skillful brown nosers that you've ever worked with, and that's what you've got a body of. That's why when it's time for them to vote, some of them can't hold themselves but say, I'm going to vote for the second time for the honorable man from New York, the Akeem. We don't need all that. Just say who you're going to vote for.
Castro of Texas. Jeffries. Chavez DeRemer. McCarthy. Sherfilis McCormick. Jeffries.
I think what could happen is these are not patient people, and there's no rules in the House. So they would have to continue to do this. These aren't people that like to work. They would rather be on a Zoom call doing, camera off, doing whatever they want to do. So I think what they could do is say after this one, they could say we're going to break or do something like that and say, y'all Republicans work it out and don't come out until you have it worked out. I don't know if there's anything saying that they can't do that. There's no rules. I don't know if they have to vote on that rule or what, but they're not going to want to keep doing this over and over and over again.
Clyburn. Jeffries.
That is the great corrupt Jim Clyburn.
Jordan. Cohen. Jeffries. Cole. McCarthy. Collins. McCarthy.
Jim Clyburn has been in Congress for 30 years, by the way.
McCarthy.
Why would you want to be a House representative for 30 years?
Jeffries. Correa.
Then there's some goofballs in here.
Jeffries. Costa.
Notice the Jim Clyburns of the world is not going to come up here and like, oh, the honorable, and he's like, I'm a boss in here. I just say Jeffries.
Courtney.
The ones that are trying to add all this fluff to it, they're not the ones that are respected in this body of brown nosers.
Crane. Jordan.
Is that all of them? It doesn't feel like it's all of them.
McCarthy.
Do you remember last process, 2020? Remember, or was it? It was 2020. Yeah, they brought in. It happened in 2021. They brought in all the people that, even if they tested positive for that thing, Nancy still brought them in because they had to be in to vote.
Jeffries. Curtis. McCarthy.
And remember, they've been working on Zoom all for the last 2 years. They've been under this Zoom type stuff for the last 2 years. A lot of them haven't barely been showing up in DC. So now they're going to have to show up every day. That's a startling thing. It's like telling employees you can't work from home anymore. You got to get dressed, do no more pajamas. You got to come into the office. So they're all a little, you can tell it's a little different vibe than you normally would see. And as these votes go on, if they don't settle it quickly, it's just going to get more and more agitated. It's not going to be laughter as much. You're going to see more tensions flare up and all that.
Jeffries. De La Cruz. McCarthy. DeLauro.
You got to be there.
DeLauro.
You can't be in the bathroom. Can you come back to them?
Del Bene. Jeffries.
I don't know the rules if they can come back to somebody.
Jeffries. Desanye. Jeffries. Desjardins. McCarthy. D'Esposito. McCarthy. Diaz-Balart. McCarthy. Dingle. Jeffries. Doggett. Jeffries. Donalds. McCarthy. Duarte. McCarthy. Duncan. McCarthy. Dunn of Florida. McCarthy. Edwards. McCarthy. Elsie. McCarthy. Emmer.
Okay, I'm going to break away.
McCarthy. Escobar.
I'm going to break away and do
Jeffries.
one of these segments here.
Eshu. Jeffries.
Let's take a trip. There's this website. You might have heard of it, and I'll come back to the speaker vote. I'm not hearing any commentary, so I don't know if anybody switched votes yet. That's all that matters. We want to know if somebody switched their vote from the first to the second. So I'll have to come back after the fact. But there's this website called Middle MAGA, and under the blog, well, these are not articles, but just my notes here. But you can see the topics. Some of them are actually articles. It takes me a long time to write, so I can't write everything. But this is one of the things that's been on my mind recently is what's happening to people suddenly. This isn't normal. And I'm not going to be sitting here. I don't care what Google says or anybody else says. I'm not going to be sitting here acting like it's normal. My family and I yesterday were just in the background. We're watching. I don't really even watch football like that or care that much anymore like I used to. We're watching the football game. And Bills safety DeMar Hamlin gets up from a tackle and collapses. And immediately after I saw this, I was like, this game cannot continue. This is not a normal situation. I've been watching football. I'm 45 now. Been watching football my whole life. Never seen anything remotely like that ever happen. Kind of seen head injuries, but nobody collapses like that from a head injury. Seen paralyzed, scary stuff. Never in my life, I'm sure it's happened before, have I ever seen someone get up from a hit. It was a normal hit, nothing unusual there, and collapse. So I said, we got to stop the game. Players met, the coaches met. They're like, we can't play this game. We don't know what's going on. So hopefully he's okay. DeMar Hamlin, before I continue on with this topic, I want to play a video directly from him to show that this is a young man who has a life, and we're hoping that he is okay. All the videos I've seen from him really reflect him in a positive light.
I mean, the only thing I can think of saying right now is I'm big on family. Like, I'm big on my family unit. Like, my mom, my dad, my little brother, like, that's pretty much my whole world. Outside of any other thing going on, my life revolves around them. Like, I don't really do too much without my mom and dad's opinion. Whether I take it or whether I don't, you know, but sometimes I just want to hear it, you know. That's just how I was raised, and that's just something I'm big on. So that's I would say family.
I love it. I want to.
I mean,
and that's just, there's many things about him giving out toys to kids and all kinds of stuff. So thoughts and prayers first and foremost. I don't even have an update for where he's at. You can chat if you know. I'm going to bring this to the bigger topic, though. I'm not going to ignore this elephant in the room. Tired of it. But I'm on YouTube right now, so we can't address it. And that tells you a lot by itself. Can't address it directly. That's for sure. Recently, This is actually yesterday. Barry Lane, European golf veteran, unlived at 62 after short illness. This is via the New York Post, and I quote tweeted. They did not reply. I'm being very serious. In all seriousness, what does short illness mean? They chose a term to use for someone passing away. I think it's a fair question to ask why. Why did you use that term? What does it mean? What does short illness mean? What was the illness? New York Post posted that. We're seeing it all over the place. Suddenly this, suddenly that. This was a rough video to watch, but rest in peace to Uche. Uche Nwaneri was a football player, I believe offensive lineman. He had been doing Madden commentary, video games, all that kind of stuff. You'd even seen him with Geeks and Gamers. He was doing his streaming thing. Really liked it. He passed away. Rest in peace. Looked like it was a heart problem. Don't know anything out. I'm not making any, just to make sure, I'm not making any allegations. I'm not a doctor. I don't do that. I didn't do any autopsy on these people. I'm just saying they passed away. But there is an elephant in the room that I can talk about. Part of his legacy, you do have to acknowledge it. Uche said, okay, let's get these V mandates and V passports up and running ASAP. We see in children unlived daily from the unV'd selfishness. Pregnant women at risk too. Protect life, mandate the V. Jail anyone who refuses to protect life. I'm not going to judge him, but that is a part of what he said while he was with us. I said I have no idea what happened to Uche, but generally speaking, here's where my concern is. My concern is about the government we've created. I'm doing this live stream about these self-aspirational sleaze bags in DC. And as a collective body, they are all pushing a drug onto people. And they all know there's a concern amongst the people, amongst the public, not everybody, but a significant concern amongst a significant amount of people, so much so that you have to censor it online. And they're acting like a guilty person would. As a collective body, those people we just watched in the House and the Senate, they're even worse. You think those were self-aspirational sleazebags? Wait until you see the Senate. They think they're deities. They look at the House and they kind of relieve themselves on them. They don't think very highly of the House. I'm including Trump on this too. I don't know. People get hurt about Trump. You have to get over that. There's nobody above critique and criticism. Our government, including Trump, knows that citizens are wondering if it's the poison that's playing a role anytime somebody has a short illness, as the New York Post called it, or suddenly something happens. And the government, including Trump, couldn't care less. Why do I say that? Well, if you were a part of pushing a drug to people, and people, right or wrong, I will steel man the other argument. Assume that it has nothing to do with what some people call a poison. It's irrelevant. People don't know, so they're asking questions. It's the same thing as what happened in the last general process. People don't know. You can say it was the best and the most secure and the safest, but that's irrelevant if people don't trust it. So if people don't trust it, if we had a government of people that were worth anything, obviously what they would do as a unanimous body, 536 of them, including the POTUS, would say, our mission right now, drop everything, the Ukraine stuff, drop it all. Let's have a debate. Let's show them proof that what we are pushing, what we recommend for them to take, has nothing to do with all this stuff. That's what your mission would be if you were innocent. My whole life, 44 years old, last couple years, I had no idea how sadistic and evil our own government is. Comments from common citizens on Twitter. Someone said, the one from tonight is going to send the conspiracy theorists all over the edge. It seems like they got him stabilized, but all eyes were on it. So he's calling other people a conspiracy theorist, but he has to comment on it as well. He says, I hate seeing people pass at young ages. And I know this DeMar did not pass as of my knowledge now, hopefully not. But just in general, I already did the stuff on the soccer players and all that other stuff. And I know we're not being talked to straight. That's his take, not mine. But I'm not fully there yet. You're not fully there yet. Walter Runner says, I'll bite. No, Walter, you're not biting. This is good discourse. What do you need to... Walter's like, what do you need before we get you fully there, bruh? And fully there doesn't mean to believe something you can't prove, but it sounds like you're afraid to go to the next step. David says, we know it causes, he's talking about what I'm saying generally. I didn't say anything specific, YouTube. Causes damage. We have an idea why it causes that damage, but we don't know to what extent. Why don't we ever get past that point and into an investigation? I don't know, David. Sounds like you are in agreement. I said the fact that we have a president pushing this drug, a senator, Dick Durbin, said, well, the great Dr. Fauci, I'm paraphrasing, retired, and he was a friend of mine. He was a friend of yours? I don't give a damn if he was a friend of yours or not. What the hell does that have to do with me? Did him being a friend play a role? Was that a conflict of interest in you playing your role as a check and balance of the government to make sure that a monster like Fauci didn't get out of control? And David, they don't even acknowledge this elephant in the room that I have to dance around because I'm on YouTube. In fact, they call me a lunatic for asking the question. I don't make any definitive takes on stuff that I don't know or prove. I ask questions. It's exactly the same playbook as they did fortifying the last process. Here's another citizen who came at me. I'm going to end with this. I questioned Trump. Trump's a part of this too. They said Trump pushed for other forms and treatments. Trump did not mandate the thing. And I said, I never said Trump mandated it. That's not the point. He needs to be vocal now. Citizens aren't sure why people are being unlived or they're unliving. The only reason that these politicians, including POTUS and Trump, aren't bending over backwards to address those concerns is because they're all acting like they're guilty of something. And Trump needs to speak on that, period. Let me know what you think. I'm going to go back to the coverage, see if we got any new news.
Sitting on the House floor there for the first vote. I'm not sure if I see any kids here for the second ballot because of how long of a process this could take. But this is a day that's supposed to be, for new members of both parties, a celebration. And instead, what they're encountered with is the potential for a protracted speaker fight, certainly a speaker fight that's going in to a second ballot. And now it appears, unless something were to drastically change, a third ballot, because Kevin McCarthy does not have the votes right now on this ballot to win Speaker.
You bring a good point about seeing all the kids on the floor and the family members and the parents.
He is right. It's typically a picture, photo op day. The biggest thing that typically happens in the day is the rules. Especially after the pandemic, the rules got very lax. They were fighting over the muzzles at one point. In his opinion, because we've got 11 others here, it looks like McCarthy won't get it again, but we'll see.
Let's bring our Rick Klein back into the mix here, our political director. So what's the strategy going forward now for Republicans as we watch Kevin McCarthy on track here to lose the second vote?
Yeah, Kira, we were now guaranteed a third vote, and that might be the most difficult, maybe the defining vote for Kevin McCarthy. And here's why. They played it as straight as they could the first time, basically trying to say, look, I've been elected the House Republican leader. You have to vote for me. Then they played probably the best card they could, which was maybe the backup candidate of Jim Jordan, of some of the conservatives, some of the Freedom Caucus folks, and say, look, he's now going to say publicly, vote for Kevin McCarthy. Well, now you're showing, rather than just telling Kevin McCarthy that he doesn't have the votes. what happens in this next ballot becomes critical, because it's hard to imagine any of the 11 plus now that have voted for Jim Jordan. Now that we've seen the coalescing behind Jordan of any of the anti-McCarthy crowd. It's hard to see how you shake them. So that's where it becomes interesting. Is there someone else drafted into the movement? So far, things have played out about.
There's no one else. It looks like it's Jim Jordan or bust.
Jim Jordan the answer? I think almost certainly not. Is the answer to try to urge the McCarthy forces to support a consensus candidate, to recognize that they're not going to be able to get their guy across the finish line? Then does Steve Scalise or Elise Stefanik or someone else entirely come into view as a potential?
Elise Stefanik doesn't seem like she has any chance. Who are these people that they have? Who are these people doing this analysis? There is no Elise. There's no Steve Scalise. It doesn't look like they have any type of chance here. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. I was wrong about the red wave, that's for sure. The analysis doesn't make sense. It's Jim Jordan. That's what it is. McCarthy doesn't have beef with Jordan. McCarthy's not going to get behind Elise Stefanik. I don't think so. That'd be embarrassing for him. Jim, the only person he would get behind Steve Scalise, maybe. The only people he would get behind are like these veterans. Like, that's why Jim Jordan was like, we've been in here for 16 years or whatever. He's not getting behind Elise Stefanik. That ain't happening.
Sort of rattles some cages, changes votes. And at what point does Kevin McCarthy at any point say, okay, enough is enough? I mean, what's the I guess the number of options that we could witness here? Because McCarthy has said he's staying in for the entire battle, right?
Yeah, Kira, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if they try to take some kind of a break after this, go back to their corners and strategize again. Because clearly, if you just go up with the same candidates, you're not going to get a different result. So either another name has to come forward, or the negotiations have to continue in a different way. But here's the thing: Kevin McCarthy's been trying to engage in these negotiations for 2 months, including as late as this morning, trying to get across the finish line with these folks. To hear what Matt Gaetz said about Kevin McCarthy, saying that he's sold pieces of his soul piece by piece over the last decade, that's really hard to come back from. Matt Gaetz is not going to be on your side, but of the other, how determined are they really? I think this next round is where we're likely to see a different name begin to percolate, and it might be part of a strategic play that both sides are involved in. But I can't imagine them going forward immediately with a third vote without some kind of another option and some kind of another end game.
I agree. They're not going to go to a third vote without a long break.
Because the math is as stubborn as it's always been.
So we really didn't see Kevin McCarthy working the floor after the first vote, right? He actually left the floor, took a bit of a break, came back. We saw him chit-chatting with a few people like Jim Jordan. But, when we were talking to Tom Gray,
he's not going to be able to
for Georgia.
He's not going to work the floor in front of all the cameras. He's going to do it behind the scenes.
Really well, and he was surprised that he didn't see Kevin McCarthy jumping up and really working the room and trying to make deals in the moment. So if they do take a break, is it time for Kevin McCarthy to really get serious here and just say, hey, I want to meet with you, I want to meet with you, I want to meet with you, let's go behind closed doors, let's figure this out? I mean, does it intensify? Because he's already been pretty defiant, right?
Yeah, I think it's not going to play out on the House floor, and that's is likely to be behind closed doors as he tries to figure out what his options are. The big play that McCarthy forces had after round one was to say to have Jim Jordan be the next person to nominate him, and that obviously has not worked. Likely to have fewer than 19 non-McCarthy votes this year, but still, it's hard to get to whittle that number down, particularly if you know that we started at that 5 dead set, never, ever, forever Kevin McCarthy. They had to prove it, and they've proven it. And they've overperformed with their numbers now for a second straight vote. I think that's why the real intensity moves behind closed doors after this.
Yes.
All right. Well, we are now into that second vote. Looks like Representative Kevin McCarthy is on track to lose this one as well. He already lost the first
because of these others.
Speaker vote. We are going to continue to monitor this. We're just going to take.
To my knowledge, you can't switch your vote. So these others pretty much solidify that it's not going to be McCarthy, and it also solidifies that it's not going to be Jeffries, where I said there was a long shot that it could be Jeffries. Let me go ahead and do another segment that I had prepared. And I'm trying to do better at managing my time. I'm like, okay, when I got some free time, let me prepare a segment. So when I got something, I'm live, I can just go ahead and do it or record it. Let's go back to the website. If you don't know, my website is Middle MAGA. The reason why I'm Middle MAGA is because, like Jessica, you could say Jessica, who was in the chat. I don't know if she still is. I haven't seen the chat in a second. I like Jimmy Dore and Steve Bannon. That's the only reason why I say Middle MAGA. And but I like MAGA more. MAGA is the only real populist movement that we have that has any type of power. As we're seeing it here, I've been saying it for a long time. MAGA is the only populist movement that has power in DC. And we're seeing it right here in real time. We have not seen the populist left do anything that shows me that they have power in DC. Not a thing, not a one, not a thing. So that's why I like MAGA more, and I just lean more to the right. But I am for universal basic, or I always mess up. I'm for single payer universal health care, assuming we had a government we could trust. I understand giving the government that we're seeing here that power to cut you off of your medical services would be very dangerous. But I do kind of like Tulsi's idea where you would still have a private option. But the point is everyone should have medical coverage. I do believe in universal basic income, again, under a government that you could trust. So I do believe in some of these positions that you might call socialist. I might do it if I have time. Young July had a crazy segment. Not crazy, but he had a great rant that made me think about, I agree with him on a lot of things about homelessness and picking yourself up, but I still do believe in a universal basic income. So I might piggyback off of that rant he had in his live. He had a good live yesterday, as usual. I'm seeing a troubling pattern from Ron DeSantis. I want to share this with everyone, and I always leave room to be wrong, to see if, and there's people, a lot of friends of the show who are actually in Florida who would know better than me. But I'm seeing a very troubling sign to me from DeSantis. And what am I referring to? I'm gonna first say, I don't know if is he playing games? Is he backpedaling? Here's 3 issues with DeSantis that might show a concerning pattern of potential him doing PR stunts. The first one I'm going to cover, I have a link here. If you go to middlemaga.com, you'll find a link to this article. This is the main one. This $3.5 million fine against Leon County for firing county employees has been withdrawn. But then I did a couple more just to show this is why I see a pattern. $200 million from schools that defied him on the muzzle mandates. He overruled that, backing down from the Disney stuff too, it looks like. So let's start here. What am I seeing here that's causing concern for me? We're looking at this. Florida pulls this fine that Ron DeSantis levied on Leon County in Florida. I'm like, okay, why did you pull that? Did they agree to something? Like, why would you pull it when you said you were going to do it? Leon County, going back to 2021 to tell you what happened, why they got fined, they had a state fine for a V requirement. So the county here made the V a requirement of employment. All 714 employees had to get the V or fall under a select few exemptions. I don't know if they're religious or whatever else. But at the end, 14 employees were fired because they declined to get the V. Just horrific stuff. I mean, just some of the worst stuff we've ever seen from our federal government, period. Meaning you have to take this is at the state level, but the federal government led this whole thing. They all rallied back to the CDC, even though they didn't have to listen to the CDC. And I really don't want to say that stuff on a video, but I said it, CDC. Can you imagine? Could you imagine just some random person on the street telling you, you have to take this medical drug or else this happens? That's literally what our government did. So they said, through the office of Ron DeSantis, governor said, the county is assessed a total fine of this $3.57 million. And this was kind of shady, not shade. They were levying shade. They said payment must be made within 30 days of the final order in this manner. Check or money order is acceptable. I think that was kind of a funny quote. DeSantis said he would not let Floridians be fired because of a V mandate and announced he would begin levying $5,000 fines per employee. And everyone, including myself, clapped and said he's rallying for the people. But now we're seeing that they're pulling back the fine. So I'm like, okay, well, it's kind of after the fact. Do you really need to fine them? What did they do? Did you get a concession that they would at least offer the jobs back to everyone they fired? Or what's the concession that you made? You can't just pull back the money. As a part of the agreement, Long, who is the commissioner of this county, agreed to consider, this is the key word, to consider rehiring the 14 employees who were terminated for refusing to comply. For those who are, maybe if you're on the lockdown left and you happen to find this channel accidentally, I think most people who are just on the channel on purpose don't need this. But if you're in that wackadoo left, the NPC left, the lockdown left, the climate left, the zombie left, when somebody says consider, that means they don't have, that's just a fancy way of saying I'll do it if I want to do it. So that's not a concession. The county strongly contends that the V requirement was not only completely legally justifiable at that time, but also necessary. So they didn't even make concessions on that. This is the same county that recently reinstated, I'm talking about recently as in 2022, December, reinstated a muzzle requirement. I think it's just for their employees. So do you see where my concern is with DeSantis? Through the Florida Department of Health, took back the fine, and this county is saying, poking their chest out like, yeah, we did the right thing, and we might consider rehiring the 14 we fired. What does that mean? That means they are not going to, probably. Or they don't have to as a part of this. That doesn't look good for DeSantis, does it? And then I'll just quickly cover the other stuff. We were chatting about this on Twitter. Florida governor school districts that defied no muzzle mandate to lose $200 million. No, DeSantis overrules lawmakers, quietly rejects penalties for the school. So he came out big, we're going to do the $200 million. You can't put muzzles on. Remember? He did the whole presser, everything. And then now quietly, no, we don't need to do that. What about Disney? I did the whole live about F around. This was before the F around and find out video that went viral from that one dude on the chalkboard had came back, or the dry erase board. I was like, you effed around with DeSantis and you found out. And look at this. DeSantis camp softens tone toward Disney with Bob Iger back as CEO. He's as woke as anybody and looking into quiet things down in Florida. So you did all that boisterous stuff. My nickel, I'm going to need you, and I'm talking about you, DeSantis, I'm going to need you to be as boisterous with your backpedaling, your moonwalking like Michael Jackson. I need your chest poked out for that as well. Anthony Sabatini reported in December, Florida is working behind the scenes to give Disney its special tax-free and self-governing district back. The pretext for this capitulation was that Bob Iger, the new returning CEO, was non-woke. What? He's as woke as anybody. Meanwhile, here's what Bob Iger is pushing. Anti-2A. Disney's tax break left untouched in DeSantis' feud. What's happening here? DeSantis is reneging. Do I need to call him reneging Ron? Do I need to call him that nigga reneging Ron? What other nicknames need to come out? The moonwalking like Michael Jackson, Ron DeSantis? And I'll end with this. Is this another Trump was right moment yet again? Trump called him Ron DeSanctimonious. And no one really took that. Even the people who were backing Trump that I really felt like took the name like DeSanctimonious. Like if you looked up sanctimonious in the dictionary, the definition is making a show of being morally superior to other people. It might be one of Trump's best nicknames based on what I'm seeing. It's the perfect nickname. He comes out like the Superman, the S on his chest to save the day. And then all of a sudden, when you pull back everything, he's softer than Clark Kent. Trump called him Ron DeSanctimonious, and no one really took that nickname seriously. It could turn out to be another Trump was right moment. That's the perfect nickname for what we're seeing from this bruh. Let me know what you think. Let me get back to the coverage, see what we're seeing here. We're on the third round. Is this exciting for you, everybody? We're on the third round of the roll call in the new Congress. Exciting times.
Of some deals that could be made here. You know, what would Kevin McCarthy need to do to sway more members to come to his side? Can you give a few examples of what could work?
Man, these people are hard-headed.
What could be at play here when he's trying to make these deals?
The thing that would seem to do it immediately would be to agree for any one member to be able to offer a motion to replace the speaker. Now, does McCarthy want a job that he knows he can't keep under those circumstances? That's a question that only Kevin McCarthy can truly answer. And does that then embolden others to start to ask for other things? Does that make everything else unravel? Beyond that, we've heard talk about empowering rank and file members to have a legal entity that's separate from the House of Representatives in case they wanted to pursue legal action against Democrats, commitments to different types of oversight. That's the easy stuff. Maybe a commitment even on what you do for the debt deal, but it's very hard. There aren't a lot of arrows left in his quiver.
Timmons.
This anchor is terrible. There's nothing else. Y'all are hard-headed. There's no concessions. So who knows? Maybe I'm wrong and Gates will, you know, and others will concede, but I don't think there are any concessions that will do it other than let's agree on Jim Jordan.
Standpoint.
Well, you nailed it, Kira. It's been 100 years, literally 100 years this month that this happened. Frederick Gillett was a Republican from Massachusetts. It took 9 ballots to secure the speakership. So this is not unprecedented, but it hasn't happened for a long time. Partly because when a party takes power, they're organized, right? They have a plan. And this is a reflection of a very fractured, very riven party, partly because of the legacy of the previous Republican president, Donald Trump, who left not only the nation more divided, but his party more divided as well.
Underwood.
Okay, am I putting you on the spot if I say let's go back 100 years and talk more about the last time that we did observe what we are observing now, moving into the fourth ballot, or the ninth ballot, I guess, rather, where a vote was finally made. What was the scenario? What was that time in history? What was taking place?
Warren Harding was president. Kira, it was a very different time in America. There were just undercurrents in the Republican Party, divisions in the Republican Party that made selecting a speaker a little perilous, a little more difficult at that time. But I think what I would be concerned with, and I think Rick alluded to this, what I would be concerned about if I were Kevin McCarthy is if I do get the speakership, what it portends for my leadership going forward. Am I able to bring this party together to actually accomplish something in this Congress? That's what I would be worrying about if I were Kevin McCarthy. He also, I think, must realize the very big shoes he fills with Nancy Pelosi. We saw 2 years ago the divisions in the Democratic Party as Speaker Pelosi took the leadership, but she quickly consolidated power. I suspect that will be far more challenging for Kevin McCarthy if indeed he secures the speakership.
So how do you think Kevin McCarthy is going to go, whether he secures the speakership or not? How is he going to go down in history after this?
Well, first of all, he has to make history by becoming the speaker, and that remains to be seen. So
Webster, Florida.
We'll see if that happens. I think, Kira, it depends on what he can get done, obviously, and that will necessitate bringing a coalition together of Republicans who, at this point, many of whom at this point are stridently opposed to his taking the speakership. Even if Kevin McCarthy does get it, though, he's still dealing with an upper chamber, the Senate, which is dominated by Republicans, albeit by a very thin margin, and a Democratic presidency with Joe Biden at the helm. So he's not going to be able to accomplish a great deal. He can probably block a lot of the Biden agenda. Sometimes you get credit in history not for what you do, but for what doesn't get done by virtue of you being in place. So that's probably the better way that Kevin McCarthy will make history, by preventing the Biden administration from getting through its legislative agenda.
McCarthy.
Well, as we know, I mean, as long as this continues, we don't have a functioning Congress, right? So nothing can get through. So there are a lot of other things that could make history, good or bad, not looking real great if you don't have a functioning Congress.
That's exactly right. And I suspect that the Joe Biden White House knows that they will mostly get things done in these next couple of years through executive orders, since you don't have a Democrat-dominated House of Representatives. You do have, again, as I mentioned, a very thin margin in the Senate. So the Biden White House, too, will have its challenges over the next couple of years, Kira.
Of the representatives-elect who did not answer
All right, let's go ahead and listen in. The vote just marked.
Oh, so they do call back. It's not going to make a difference.
Costa. Jeffries. DeLauro. Jeffries.
So it looks like some members were late to the party. I remember when they called out DeLauro and she didn't get a vote, and now she is. So it looks like there are a few members
Gallego.
that have shown
Jeffries.
up now, and they are making their choices heard. Representative Kevin McCarthy still on track to lose the second speaker vote, but there are a few members here that have just shown up.
McCarthy.
Every vote counts. Let's see who else.
Webster of Florida. McCarthy.
Why don't they have the total up here? Because I don't know if they're allowed to change their vote. They didn't have enough.
I think that's everybody. Jay O'Brien still with us up on the Hill. Jay, it looks like possibly there were some folks late to the party, or is it possible that they were there, didn't call out a name? Now this is one of the technicalities. I'm not quite sure what happened. Possibly they weren't in the room. Now they are. What just went down?
Yeah, you have to be there at the beginning, but then you may not have been there when your name was called, which is what you're seeing them finish off with the members that they may have missed over the roll call vote. But the key point is this. Right now, and it will end this way in the vote. Actually, the vote's over. You're seeing it now. 19 Republicans voted against Kevin McCarthy.
Yep.
He did not move a single vote in his direction. He did not change a single mind from the first ballot to the second ballot. The only changes we saw are the far-right Republican members who opposed Kevin McCarthy all got behind Jim Jordan. So you didn't have a bunch of other different kinds of nominees picking up a single vote there or a single vote here. Instead, you had 19 Republicans vote for Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan, who began this vote by nominating Kevin McCarthy and saying he does not want to be Speaker of the House, and saying to his colleagues that they should throw their support behind Kevin McCarthy and begin the work of the new Congress, because the new Congress is stalled, it's frozen until you elect a Speaker of the House. Matt Gaetz came up after Jim Jordan and said, I hear everything, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I hear everything Jim Jordan just said, but I'm going to nominate him for Speaker anyway. And Jordan goes on to get 19 votes for Speaker. That is a significant impediment for Kevin McCarthy. The fact that he was unable to move a single vote in his direction from the first ballot to the second ballot is very, very, it creates a much rockier road for his team. Case in point, When Kevin McCarthy emerged from the chamber after the first ballot, he said to my colleagues who are standing right there in front of the chamber, Will Staken and Catherine Faulders, that his team relatively expected this to happen, that they expected that kind of resistance on the first ballot. Now the question becomes, did they expect that kind of resistance on the second ballot? And what is their plan for the third?
All right, Jay, thanks. We're going to get straight to our David Muir now and join the network.
Now, okay, let me just on that topic there. To me, it's clear, it's just my opinion, allegedly, that Jim Jordan is working in conjunction with Matt Gaetz. I think they had some type of conversation about this. This is the perfect chess move, but Kevin McCarthy knows it as well. The chess move is, if you're going to make a move to get Kevin McCarthy out, who is it? You have to have another person that can get 218 votes. There's not many people that can do that. Elise Stefanik has no chance of getting 218 votes. She's too green and new, and she's rubbed some people the wrong way. Steve Scalise, maybe. Biggs, nah, has no chance. Jim Jordan does, though. So they knew that. Matt Gaetz and them were like, Jim, make sure you don't diss Kevin. Don't diss him. Because what's going to happen is if we're successful, Kevin's got to endorse you, and he will never endorse you if you diss him. What I think happened is Kevin knows what they're doing, and I don't think he wants to endorse Jim now because he has a feeling that they were playing games behind his back. But the problem is it's a chess move. Kevin McCarthy has no other move. Who else is he going to pick that could get 218 votes? And all 19 of them now voted for Jim Jordan, which really makes Matt Gaetz one of the most powerful people in the House right now. You don't have to be Speaker to be powerful. Hats off to Mr. Matt Gaetz. He's showing you that everything Jimmy Dore said about force the vote. If AOC is the head of the, however you want to say it, she is the most prominent of the squad. AOC could have had that much power back when it was their turn. Matt Gaetz is running the House right now. Well played, sir. Well played.
Closed doors this morning, making an impassioned plea for them, telling them that he will not stand down, that he's willing to battle this out. One by one, we've seen members actually go into his office. He's actually moved into the Speaker's office, even though he does not have the votes to be the next Speaker of the House. We know that he's currently leaving the chamber. We can imagine.
Okay, he can pack up his stuff and leave at any moment, so don't get too comfortable, bruh.
That he deserves to be the next speaker. But at this point, it's clear he does not have the votes. And I just checked in with a source close to McCarthy who told me that nothing has changed at this point. He is willing for this to go on as long as it takes. And again, David, the House is essentially paralyzed at this point. No legislating, no bills can be passed until there's a Speaker of the House.
Paralyzed at this point, fairly new, early in the new Congress, but as Rachel points out there, and Rachel, we'll get a follow-up here for you, no business can proceed until they actually have a Speaker of the House. Rachel, you mentioned that Kevin McCarthy moved.
Now, part of this, too, is the omnibus. So this group, these corporate people on, this is ABC I'm sharing the feed from, and thank you to ABC for allowing me to feed it, to stream it. But these corporate people aren't going to tell what's happening. The omnibus bill passing made this even a more dire situation for like Matt Gaetz and others. What happened is the omnibus bill passed that covers spending all the way from now until September of this year, 2023. So they have no leverage financially. That pissed them off because they knew the House was going to take over in right now, and you passed a bill that essentially takes away their leverage until September. Things are going to get crazy in September 2023. Do you see this? This proves that in September of 2023, things are going to get crazy. Things are going to get wild. We're going to be in more uncharted territory. But the Omni bill passing made this, I think it solidified Matt Gaetz and this group of people who are defiant.
Republicans back another Republican. But at this point, it's still clear that Kevin McCarthy just does not have the votes, David.
And Rachel, you mentioned Jim Jordan didn't know this, says he doesn't want to be Speaker of the House. So is there a possibility here that somebody else now emerges as a potential sort of alternative to Kevin McCarthy, given the fact that these 19 members of Congress appear to be determined?
I could be wrong, but I can't think of another name.
That is a possibility, but then the question is, can that person get the votes that they need in order to become the next speaker?
Who?
Kevin McCarthy can't do it, and he has the support of the majority of the conference. Will someone else, the number 2 in leadership, Steve Scalise, so will the number 3, will they be able to capture the Republican support that will be necessary in order to clinch the speaker's gavel?
No.
Right now, no Republican at that point has the numbers, which is why we are seeing this move.
Steve Scalise is the same. I would rather swap, swamp for swamp just to make a point. But Jim Jordan is better than Steve Scalise. Steve Scalise is Kevin McCarthy, in my opinion. At least Stefanik has 0% chance of this.
Hakeem Jeffries with 212 votes, the second round of balloting, where you have the minority party, the leader of the Democrats, actually beating the Republican. Obviously, he doesn't have the majority that he needs to become House Speaker, but this is quite something to have this happen in 2 rounds with no answer on where this is all headed.
No answer, and the exact same number of Republican defections, 19 Republicans voting for somebody other than Kevin McCarthy. What changed in the second round is that all of them coalesced around a single alternative, that's Jim Jordan. And a little bit of Republican House history is in order. It was 8 years ago when McCarthy believed he was in line to become Speaker of the House after the Republicans had won back control in 2014. And it was Jim Jordan who led the opposition to Kevin McCarthy back then and sunk his chances to become Speaker. Ended up becoming Paul Ryan, of course. Since then, Jordan and McCarthy have worked very closely. Jordan has been supporting him. But I have to tell you, David, I sat in that chamber and listened to Jim Jordan's nominating speech for the second round. He stepped forward to put McCarthy's name in for this second ballot. And that was a speech that said almost nothing about Kevin McCarthy. He was speaking about the way the House operates. He was speaking about,
this is true.
Basically how he thought things had to be run.
So let me respond. GB, thanks for coming through, friend of show. Let me make sure that volume's low enough. This is true. They have to keep going until somebody gets 218. Somebody has to get 218 votes. Until somebody gets 218 votes, this thing keeps going. And that could be Hakeem Jeffries. For some reason, my wife is distracting me. But that could be Hakeem Jeffries. That is possible. But it doesn't matter who. It could be anybody. It could be, wait for it, it could be Don Dada. It could be Liz Cheney. It's anyone, it's not likely, but anybody who gets 218 votes. So you look at that, that is a very scary thing to see. McCarthy 203, Jeffries 212. That's a scary thing to see. But, I mean, for me, not as much, but for some people more. So we're in uncharted territories. Thanks for joining the live.
Here's the thing. If we go on further here and there's a movement towards Jim Jordan, there may well be at least 5 or more moderate Republicans in the House that don't feel comfortable with Jim Jordan as Speaker. So again, you asked Rachel about new names emerging. I mean, I was looking very closely at Steve Scalise sitting just across the aisle.
I don't think
Kevin
so.
McCarthy, as all this was going on, he's quietly supporting McCarthy over and over again. He's somebody to watch, and there are others.
John, Rachel, our powerhouse team there.
You could see Kevin McCarthy say, I know what you did, Jim and Matt. A2 Brutus. It'd be Jim Jordan stabbing him in the back politically, but these are all whatever, they don't care. So you could see McCarthy say, I'm not going to do Jim because y'all played me with that. I'll do Steve. But I don't think the 19 who are voting against McCarthy are going to go for that. They're going to be like, we choose who it's going to be.
Although, Gates is out there talking about how the cherry blossoms could be blooming. That happens in March, as you well know, David. So this could go on for a long time.
And Rachel,
one are expecting for a very long night, David. That's for sure.
Yeah. And Rachel,
wow, a long night.
You talk to so many of the centrist Republicans, more
I don't know what the rules are. How late do they have to stay? How long do the breaks have to be?
A lot of frustration about what they're witnessing unfold today. It does not look good for them. The optics are simply horrible for those who did want Kevin McCarthy as their leader.
Oh, definitely. And this is supposed to be a day. I mean, we are talking about how historic this is, David, but the first day of a new Congress, we have families sitting in the chamber, members bring their children. They're supposed to get sworn into office. None of that is happening at this point. So you have a group of moderate Republicans that are growing extremely frustrated, especially because they're supposed to be riding this high after clinching a very narrow majority in the House. Listen, it wasn't the wide majority that they wanted, which is why
Breaking news, and I might go to cover it live. Breaking news, I'm hearing that the Fucci files are coming out shortly. The buzz on Twitter is that the Fucci files will be dropping shortly. Got a lot going on.
But the Republicans will still maintain control of the House. What does this mean, though, if Kevin McCarthy does, in fact, become the Speaker at the end of this day or end of these 24 hours, or perhaps somebody else emerges as well? Republicans still in control of the House. What does that mean for the Biden administration moving forward?
David, this was supposed to be the easy part. All they're doing is choosing a leader, and they can't do that. And now the question is, how much more negotiating room does Kevin McCarthy have? What else is he willing to give away about his own power as House Speaker? This next vote may be an absolutely critical one for his future as well.
That's a lie. It was never supposed to be an easy part. This is how our government's supposed to work. There's debate, gridlock on purpose. When you have these type of things, these representatives coming from different parts of the country with different beliefs, we have to come together and agree on certain things. This is not it. The only reason it happened like this, where it was easy and it was a photo op, was because the only people who were there were the uniparty. Of course, it's easy when everybody's paid by the same people, on the same boat, support the same people. You have little squabbles, but the process is simple. That it is not supposed to be a simple process, necessarily.
And all the holdouts, but as of now, he doesn't want to give that because he recognizes that puts a sword over his head as the House Speaker. Now the task of actually governing is going to become just that much more difficult, and we saw that key number of 19 holdouts not budging between the votes. That begins to shift the pressure, not from those holdouts, but to Kevin McCarthy himself. He's the guy that has to deliver for Republicans. If he can't get his own members to budge, that's not a great sign either.
Yeah, and if he gives in on that, we'll be going through this all over again a number of times in the future here, if and when he does become Speaker. If he were to give in on this potential idea that any one member of Congress could say, we don't like the job you're doing. All right. Rick Kleiner, thanks to you. We're looking at live pictures there. That's the outgoing Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Hakeem Jeffries, certainly a day of history for the two of them as well, though not expected in quite this way. Hakeem Jeffries in 2 rounds of balloting now, leading Kevin McCarthy. Also something we have not seen, again, extraordinary, that the party in power not able to elect a speaker. We haven't seen this in 100 years in this country. We'll see what the next few hours brings. Our coverage will continue on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. And of course, as I mentioned to John and Rachel there, they'll both be back with me, the entire team for World News Tonight. I'm David Muir in New York. Until then, see you soon. Good day.
So it looks like are they going to break away?
Report from ABC News.
Because we're at gridlock. Oh, no,
David,
they jump back.
Stuart Phillips here with our breaking news coverage that continues on ABC News Live. Kevin McCarthy, now the first person to lose a House Speaker vote on the first ballot in nearly 100 years, and the second vote wasn't any better.
Another part that these corporate liars don't tell you is a lot of stuff. Obviously, everything changed when Don Dada came down the escalator 2015. They tried to impeach him twice and then did a committee hearing after he was already gone in an attempt to indict him. Phoebe runs up in his crib. All of those things were unprecedented. So it's not like this push here is the first domino of unprecedented things. The first domino of unprecedented things in recent memory was Don Dada beating Hillary. That was the domino that started the fake Russia stuff and everything that was unprecedented, the censorship on social media, it to the level that's obviously illegal, unconstitutional. That's when this all started. This is a pushback. It is unprecedented, but it's a pushback from those things. J6, all that kind of stuff happened.
That's the whole purpose of these dead-ender guys who are attacking him is to weaken him and to make them in control of everything. Because you have to understand.
And you know who secretly, I'm just going to pause it when I have a thought in my head here. You know who secretly respects the hell out of this, even though she doesn't like it? Yep, Nancy Pelosi. I guarantee you, off the record, Nancy Pelosi would look at Matt Gaetz and be like, I like what you did there. Much respect. And she's probably working with, I wouldn't be surprised if she's working with Kevin McCarthy to figure out a way. She's the brightest political figure. I did one of my early videos way back when I was still young at trying to do this YouTube thing. I still am a baby, but when I was the infant, almost a fetus, I did a video on Nancy Pelosi talking about how she came up in politics. One of the greatest, her dad was mayor, I believe, or was he a congressman? And how she learned from him. She looked at his Rolodex and she was a queen of networking. She's the smartest person politically in that room. So who would Kevin McCarthy go to for help? I guarantee you he would go to Nancy. I would. If I were Kevin McCarthy, the first person I would call is Nancy. Let's take the secret tunnel. How do I get out of this? Nancy Pelosi would have whatever answers there are to getting out of this. She would be the one person, if I had to speak to someone to get a lifeline. If I were Kevin McCarthy, it would be Nancy P. How do I get the hell up out of this? How do I leverage this? She would be the one.
And they were whispering.
And I think she would help him too.
Would have loved to have been a fly on the wall there to hear if they were conspiring something here. I mean, is it possible that this is a part of the new battle plan? I don't know.
You know, Kira, I don't think any of this is part of the plan at this point. I think everyone is just rolling with the punches here as we are sort of in this, I mean, not unprecedented territory, but certainly a historic one. But Jim Jordan, at this point, you know, he was not expecting this. He actually told Matt Gaetz that he did not want him to nominate him for speaker because he wanted to show that he was rallying his support behind Republican leader Kevin McCarthy. So at this point, it's a question of who can actually get the votes that are.
That's not true. I don't believe that. Do you believe Jim Jordan's surprised about anything that happened today? He's been there for 16 years. Matt Gaetz is a relative newcomer. You think Jim Jordan's surprised about what happened? Even Kevin McCarthy. I don't think he's taken fully by surprise either.
Votes.
I mean, you know, it's been my sense. I'm Rachel.
I'm going to go to this Fox article in a second here on the 19 Republicans who voted. I want to start getting names.
Judiciary Committee, you can use that platform through all kinds of investigations of the Biden White House. He doesn't seem like.
Okay, here we go. Via Fox, just released a little bit ago. House Speaker vote. Here are the 19 Republicans who sided against McCarthy in first vote. Jim Jordan nominated Kevin McCarthy again on the second ballot. So here we go. I didn't even know he nominated him on the first one, but he had nominated him before that anyway. The House of Representatives came to a standstill. I just need the names. We're streaming it. Let's see. Where are the names? The 19 GOP representatives who voted against McCarthy. Here we go. Biggs, we knew, no surprise there. Dan Bishop, Lauren Boebert. I don't know Josh Beckering. I'm not familiar with him. Michael Cloud, not familiar with Michael Cloud. Andrew Clyde, Eli Crane, Matt Gaetz, of course, Bob Good. We know Paul Gosar, Andy Harris. I know Anna Paulina Luna, who's a newcomer and making a lot of splashes as a newcomer. I'm still getting to know her, but I do know who she is. Ralph Norman. Ralph, I did a video on Ralph Norman recently. He was the one that had the text message that went back and forth talking about the military taking over. Scott Perry, no surprise. Andy Ogles, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Don't know that. Matt Rosendale, Chip Roy, of course, and Keith Self. So I'm going to have to get to know the ones I don't know on this list. The ones that I do know, there's no surprises, of course. But those are the 19 GOP representatives that voted against McCarthy, and they all voted for Jim Jordan. So it's all roads lead to that. And Matt Gaetz with the power move. He told y'all he was going to do it. And I warned somebody needs to help Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene is still talking that stuff. She has not changed yet. And if somebody who cares for her, go get her. Go help her out. Here's a tweet from Marjorie Taylor Greene as we're unpacking the chaos that's happening. I still haven't seen her on video. How could they not be showing Marjorie Taylor Greene on video? It's weird. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweets, this is, just happened just a half an hour ago. Even though I haven't seen her, she's tweeting. It's weird I haven't seen her on camera. That is really weird. Saw Lauren Boebert even. We can't even swear in as members of Congress until we elect a speaker. I did not know that. You can't do anything. Okay. We can't form committees until we elect a speaker. That's kind of the point of this whole thing, Marjorie. I don't know what happened with you. Somebody tweeted, somebody quote tweeted, and I was like, what happened to Marjorie Taylor Greene? Like, who did something to her? What is this woman? Who is this woman? We don't know her. That's kind of the point, MTG. We Republicans can't fire Nancy Pelosi as loyal staff in the House and Capitol until we elect a speaker. That's not true. Nancy Pelosi's not speaker. I don't know who is now. I don't know what the rules are, so maybe let me stop. I don't think she's speaker anymore, but we can't investigate anything until we have a speaker. That's kind of the point. We want a speaker before we do some of these things. So my response was, could somebody who cares for her and loves her introduce her to the concept of a pivot? Just a basic, this is like dribbling the ball in basketball. One of the basic things of politics is just make that pivot when you need to. Kind of like when I made that pivot on Force the Vote. Even though I was factually right, let me make that pivot because it makes sense for what my goals are, the channel and all that. Before she ends her own career. No doubt she doesn't get it. And it looks like she could take her career down in flames. Like if Marjorie Taylor Greene, I showed a video earlier in this live that she went after Matt Gaetz. If she can't get along with Matt Gaetz, then her career is over. She has no friends in DC if that's where she's going. Let me know what you think. Let's go back to the outlet here. Let's see. I'll check behind the scenes that the Fucci files have dropped.
Because meanwhile, we don't have a functioning Congress, which means nothing's going to get passed. Nothing's going to. There'll be no movement. It'll stop down until we have a speaker.
Look at that picture.
Well, the House floor is frozen. You can't really do anything on the House floor until you elect a Speaker of the House. There are technically no rules on the House floor until you adopt the rules package, which comes after you elect a Speaker of the House. So right now, anything they do, like if they wanted to take an extended break, this is not really a break. We're just waiting for the calculation of the votes. But if they really wanted to take a break and adjourn, you'd have to have a majority vote for that. You'd have to have a majority vote to practically do almost anything on the House floor right now. Because again, there are no rules. In terms of rules, Congress, a building that is built on rules, it's like the Wild West on the House floor.
No, sounds like there's a rule to me, bruh. The rule is if you want to do something, you have to vote on it. There's the rules.
Further forestalls Congress's actions, and that's the argument that Jim Jordan tried to make to his Republican colleagues when he nominated Kevin.
One thing that I've learned in life is that sometimes a delay or stalling is not a bad thing. It's not always a good thing to be rushing and to go and to what kind of take is it that back Kevin McCarthy because we want to get started with things. What type of principled take is that? That's not a principled take about Kevin McCarthy. You just want to get stuff started. No, that's not going to work.
This is a position that Congress.
And what Matt Gaetz is doing here, for those, it's only a few people who are paying attention. Most people are working, got better things to do, more important things to do. But he is rallying the base, for sure.
As the cameras sort of scan the room to give us an idea of what's happening there on the floor as that second speaker vote has concluded and Kevin McCarthy has lost both the first and second vote. ABC News political director Rick Klein jumping in now. Democrats in full attendance, Rick, for both votes so far today. Do you think that'll continue?
Yeah, this could be an interesting ally for Kevin McCarthy. The clock and the anxiousness that some of these members may feel after multiple ballots get off the House floor. Right now, all of the Democrats have showed up for both votes. They've delivered more votes to Hakeem Jeffries, all 212 Democrats to Hakeem Jeffries, making him the numeric leader, even though he has
There's
no
the
shot
corrupt
to become
Benny
Speaker.
Thompson on the right.
But keep in mind that the only reason that the magic number is 218 is that all 434 members of the House are so far voting.
Yes.
No indications that's about to change, but that is something that McCarthy and his forces could potentially use to their advantage, simply waiting out the other side, not just the 19 recalcitrant Republicans, but some of those Democrats. They've got friends and family in town. Many of them have receptions to get to, dinners to get to. They want to get on with their lives, get on with their business. It'd be interesting to see whether McCarthy pushes toward more votes today, essentially trying to make the other side weary of showing up, changing that margin. Potentially also, even some of his own members may want to be done with it at some point because they see the nagging embarrassment. So that's just another wild card factor to keep in mind, is that
that would lead towards Jeffries winning. Democrats wanting to go home leads to Jeffries winning. So I guess he's saying that if you don't want Jeffries to win, you're going to have to vote for me. So this could get ugly.
We're rooting on fatigue to help them get over the finish line for McCarthy.
So fatigue, nagging embarrassment. At what point does Kevin McCarthy make some sort of drastic move, or do you think he will? Do you think he is truly in this to the bitter end, ballot after ballot after ballot?
He cannot talk his way out of this one. He's not going to be able to just make big statements about how united Republicans are. There's only a limited extent to which he can make this a member-by-member transaction. We've talked about his skill in negotiating. He knows these folks. They've been talking to them for weeks now about these very issues. It's hard to imagine that suddenly, after weeks of not agreeing to the concessions, he's got something magic in his hat that he's held back for this occasion. The big question is, when does he realize those 19 aren't going to shrink significantly enough that there's no way for him to become Speaker? And then how does he play it? And the precedent that you have to go back to, or at least I'm going back to now, is when John Boehner unexpectedly stepped down in the middle of the Congress, and everyone thought that Kevin McCarthy was going to be the House Speaker. When it became evident to McCarthy that he wasn't going to get the votes, he stepped down, and before he stepped aside, he told Paul Ryan he was supporting him. Even though Paul Ryan didn't want the job at the time, it took some cajoling. That might be where we land. We're not there yet, necessarily, but I do think this next vote is going to be a critical one, because if you can't move the votes between 1 and 2, and you can't move them again between 2 and 3,
I agree.
then it's going to be the pressure on McCarthy to show that he's got something different that he can do.
Yep.
All right, so as we're watching these live pictures,
I think the pressure on McCarthy to acquiesce to Jordan is going to be greater than any other pressure. Whether it's Scalise or vote for me or you're going to be here all night, the greater pressure is going to be like, Kevin, just endorse Jim and get out of here. That's going to be the bigger pressure. Now, Kevin McCarthy was the whip, and he is the money kind of guy. So there might be a lot of people who don't want to do it or say it out loud. So they might get staffers back to him or whatever. They probably won't want to do it directly, but they'll want to tell him, stop. So this is not going on until March. I don't know how long this goes on. I'm starting to think that this will get resolved within a couple days. By the end of this week, for sure, is just my opinion. They're not going to do this every day for a whole week.
Votes have consolidated behind one candidate. So there's really nothing that Jim Jordan can say or do, or Kevin McCarthy can just say at this point that's likely to change that. So I think he'd be considering some options here. The backup to the backup option is dropping out and supporting someone else. I don't think he wants to do that. I don't think his instincts are to just get behind Jim Jordan and give in to Matt Gaetz and those holdouts. But he's still got some significant cards to play. He's still the guy that has the most votes. He's still the likeliest speaker. And his hope is that he can start to...
The fact that Kevin McCarthy hasn't dropped his name out already tells you everything that you need to know. The fact that Kevin McCarthy hasn't withdrawn and said, hey, I would have liked to have been speaker. I think I was the best to be speaker, but first, second ballot, I don't have it. The fact that he hasn't acquiesced at this point proves Matt Gaetz was right all along.
Was going on, Rick, and Karine Jean-Pierre, press secretary, was asked by our Mary Bruce about what was happening here on the floor, and apparently she said that that certainly the White House is not going to insert themselves in what is going on here on the floor, but they are looking forward to working with the new Congress. Karine Jean-Pierre Goyan saying the president is willing to work with Republicans who are willing to continue to deliver for the American people. He's very optimistic on what lies ahead and how we are going to move our country forward. So really no news made out of the White House. But I guess my question is to you is, can President Biden intervene here in any way? Hurt, help?
I think there are cards that Democrats can play here, and I don't think it's likely to happen yet. But they could approach some Republicans about cutting a deal that would either have them not go to the House floor, reduce that magic number as discussed, or potentially even supporting another candidate entirely, or telling Kevin McCarthy, hey, we'll vote for you, but you have to give us some concessions. The thing is, there are other votes to get. There's all of those Democrats right now that have held together. So it's not a zero proposition. There's no precedent, I don't think, in American history of that happening, although there's been some people arguing this is the greatest time you can imagine for a consensus speaker candidate to emerge. Hard for me to imagine Republicans handing over effective control to the White House to the Democrats after their victory of a couple of months ago, but we are in uncharted territory. So I don't think there's a play right now for President Biden or for Hakeem Jeffries as the new Democratic leader, or Nancy Pelosi, who's now a backbencher in the new Congress. But it isn't to say there won't be, and there won't be a time that someone will want those votes that the Democrats could provide for House Speaker.
All right, Rick, as we continue, let's bring in former Democratic Senator from North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp. We are definitely in uncharted territory, as Rick just mentioned. So where do we go from here? And what do you make of those remarks by Jim Jordan just a little while ago?
Well, first off, I didn't hear anything about Kevin McCarthy. And so everybody who is so certain that Jim Jordan wasn't complicit in a nomination, I think you shouldn't be so quick to judge. I think if he really wanted to persuade people to vote for Kevin McCarthy, he needed to talk about Kevin McCarthy and not his vision. And so I thought it was a weak nominating speech, and the results speak for itself. The one thing that we haven't talked
I don't know who this is, but they finally got a real analyst. I'm pausing it because I was muting it before because I didn't care what these clowns had to say. I was just muting it so I could talk. I want to hear what she has to say because that was the first authentic thing I heard in this however hours I've been doing this live. The first authentic take from an analyst that I've heard. I don't know who she is, but I want to hear what she has to say.
Talked about yet is no one has defected from McCarthy. McCarthy started out with 203 votes. He still has 203 votes.
Oh, is that Heidi Heitkamp? Okay.
I think this idea
it's Heidi Heitkamp. Okay, so she does have some base takes because I was criticizing her earlier.
that he's going to walk across and start negotiating. If I'm him, I say I have 203 votes, and as long as I can hold those votes and continue to roll those votes, the exhaustion level and the pressure will build on the 19 votes to change and to come around. And so I think for McCarthy to cross the aisle and start saying, what more can I give you, when he's already given plenty, I think is a show of weakness. I think he's going to sit in that chair and he's going to take his 203 votes. And when this thing breaks is when somebody who is solid with him at 203 decides to vote the other way. But I agree with Rick. There's an intriguing idea of maybe moving a measure that would allow for a plurality. If you would elect a speaker with a plurality and not a majority, we'd see how tough those 19 votes were. If the potential was that it would be a Democratic speaker. And so I think there's some rules things that can happen. But for the most part, I think this idea that McCarthy is going out begging people for votes, I think he's holding his 203, saying we'll just keep voting, and eventually you guys are going to get tired and come to me.
This is Heidi Heitkamp, Democrat, one of the Dakotas, senator, former senator. Base takes, yeah. I don't think Kevin McCarthy's begging anybody for anything at this point. He's just going to hold out. I didn't know, so sounds like they could rule on any rule and say, you know what, let's vote on a rule for plurality. And then, because if we do it by plurality, instead of saying majority, you just have the plurality of votes, can't say that word, then Jeffries would be House Speaker right now. So what she's saying is, if you do it by whoever has the most votes, instead of the majority of votes. This is the same thing I talked about with the ranked choice voting. Some places you have to get to 50% or greater. Right now, you've got to get to the 50% or greater of the people who voted. If you, instead of doing that, you just say who has the most votes, Hakeem Jeffries would be speaker right now. So then it would put more pressure on who's really about that life. We're in interesting territory.
Huh. What do you think, Barbara Comstock?
Well, I think that's very likely. It's unless somebody in those 203 break and decide, maybe they'd get somebody at the beginning of the alphabet, to go for a Steve Scalise and then start getting some of those outside of the 19. And then would some of the 19 go that way? And then do you get people to break and go for Scalise? But otherwise, Kevin has said he's going to keep sticking with that. But the real problem is this looks awful for the Republicans. It shows the dysfunction that the whole MAGA wing has caused. This is sort of the...
So we're back to the insincerity. She knows that's a lie. It's for your uniparty people, but that's not what you present to people is, yes, this is unusual for it to happen. Here's why it's happening. Like I said, you go back to Trump, all the 2 impeachments which were neither one were legit. All these things that have never happened before, all the illegal FISA warrant and all the lying and all that stuff, the sham of a committee, the Mar-a-Lago raid, all that stuff brings us to that moment. That's what an authentic analyst would say.
Continuation of the Trump hangover for the party. And you have a real contrast to, on the other side, the Senate, you have Mitch McConnell as the longest serving leader ever. And this is somebody who has denounced Trump and hasn't been going down there at Mar-a-Lago and trying to deal with this. So I think, when you look at the election in November, the real lesson here is those who paid homage to Trump have not fared well. And this is really the last act in all of that. Trump has been an albatross around the party, and today is once again showing that he is a problem, not a solution. And the ultra MAGA wing is that those 19, no matter what you do for them, they aren't happy. There's nothing Kevin can give them at this point. And his trying to appease them is what has caused his problems.
There might be nothing that Kevin could give them, but you talked about the ultra MAGA wing of the party. I think, what size are you, ma'am? It's MAGA versus the machine. I think you need to get one of these. I can help you out with that. I can't help you out with Kevin McCarthy, though.
Not solve them.
We'll get more to that in just a minute. But Rick Klein, you have some news surrounding Steve Scalise and getting ready for another nomination here.
Yeah, our colleague Ben Siegel has been watching the floor, reporting that Steve Scalise appears to be preparing a nominating speech for Kevin McCarthy to continue this march toward trying to solidify things for him. Now, I can't help but think that the counter move to that would be for some of these, for the holdouts that are now with Jim Jordan to say they'll go behind Scalise. Instead, Scalise is someone who's been talked about as a potential House Speaker, just like Jim Jordan is. But it would appear that if that's true and that's what happens, that the McCarthy strategy of continuing to try to wait out the other side won't have changed. And I think Heidi's point, Senator Heitkamp's point, is a terrific one. The test now of McCarthy to show that he can keep his votes together, even with another round of voting when he wasn't able to peel off any of those 19 holdouts, that becomes absolutely imperative for him. But if that is the case, then we'd anticipate a speech, another nomination speech shortly that would then be followed by another round of voting.
And so, okay, so do you think that this could get going quickly then, that they are not going to stop down and take a break as we were assuming they might, because Kevin McCarthy clearly needs to rethink his battle plan if he's going to stay in this fight until the bitter end?
If this is the case, then it would appear that we'd be moving sooner rather than later toward a third round of voting. Look, they're all there. Maybe the argument is why not, and see what you can do. As we see Mr. Scalise now at the microphone, the clerk hasn't, I think, formally called the previous vote, which would then trigger the next vote in that sequence of events. So there's still a couple things that have to happen, but it does appear to me that there's some movement on the House floor that would be moving toward us seeing what the next step is from McCarthy's side.
All right, as we watch this then live, if it looks like things are about to get started or he indeed is about to speak, we will bring it up, of course, in full. But with that news, your thoughts, Heidi?
Well, I mean, I think McCarthy is playing the long game. Everybody thought he would be anxious. You look at him sitting in that seat, he's not running around, he's not buttonholing people. You know, chances are he's got people out there who are talking to maybe some of the members that they think they can move. But he's basically saying, I'm done negotiating. I've got 203 votes. If you aren't able to get any of my votes, we can keep doing this all day, and eventually you're going to have to come to me with a solution. And that solution could include maybe Democrats participating at some point, as Rick has talked about. What is the play there? But I think we're in for a long day.
It's a game of chicken. It's a game of chicken, no different than two cars racing at each other. Who is going to divert from the path quicker? So there's some Twitter stuff going on. Let me share this real quick. I don't know if this is the Fucci files though. I was hoping for the Fucci files. Matt Taibbi is tweeting. I don't know what this is. Is this the Fucci files? Thread. The Twitter files. How Twitter let the intelligence community in. This is the first time I'm reading this. In August 2017, when Facebook decided to suspend 300 accounts with suspected Russian origin, Twitter wasn't worried. Its leaders were sure they didn't have a Russia problem. We did not see a big correlation, no larger patterns. Facebook may take action on hundreds of accounts, and we may take action on about 25. Keep the focus on Facebook. Twitter was so sure they had no Russia problem. Execs agreed the best PR strategy was to say nothing on record, quietly hurl. This isn't Fucci, though. So I'm going to break away from this if they don't get to Fucci. These Twitter files, I'm not really, the information's good, but I'm not really impressed with the whole process here. We don't know when they're going to drop. It doesn't look like the journalists are able to do their own searches in the data. We're on, what number are we on now? This I don't think this is it because he didn't number it. They had been numbering it like Twitter Files 10 or whatever. The Twitter Files release is a mess. It's just awful. I do not like it at all.
The House be in order. Will the House be in order? The tellers agree in their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 434, of which the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212. The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 203. The Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 19. No person having received the majority of the whole number of votes cast by surname, a speaker has not been elected. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana rise?
Madam Clerk, I rise to nominate Kevin McCarthy for the position of Speaker of the House.
The gentleman is recognized.
Casual Goats in the building.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We all came here to get things done, to get big things done, to solve the problems. And I hope when we get through today that all of the members on both sides of the aisle will join together with us to solve the problems, to address inflation that is crushing middle-class families, to get control over spending that's driving that inflation, Madam Clerk.
Yield? Will the House be in order?
And we all know what those problems are. We've been talking about them for a long time. We've been proposing legislation for a long time. In fact, it was Kevin McCarthy who put together task forces over a year ago to get members engaged in the process of not just talking about what we don't like, not just talking about what the problems are. We know what those problems are. But how do you fix those problems? And so we started rolling those bills out. We've attempted to bring bills on this floor to address inflation, to lower the cost of goods when families go to the grocery store and they can't even buy all the food they need for their families if they can find that food on their shelf. But those bills were rejected. If a family has trouble putting gas in the tank to make it to the grocery store, because we've got such horrible energy policies under what President Biden's done to shut down American energy that families can't even afford to put gas in their tanks. And so we brought legislation to the floor to lower the cost of gasoline. And you know what? Those bills were rejected by the previous majority. And I use that term for a reason, previous majority, because we want a majority talking about fixing those problems. But we can't start fixing those problems until we elect Kevin McCarthy as our next speaker. And so what have we laid out? We've got bills just this week to start addressing some of those problems, to start addressing our energy insecurity that's been created when President Biden shut down American energy. There is absolutely no reason that we need to rely on foreign countries to produce our energy. We could produce it all here, cleaner, better, more efficient, and create American jobs in the process. Let's get those bills to this floor. How long have we been highlighting this open southern border? That's not just brought millions of people across our border. Kevin McCarthy's led delegations down to the border to show what the problem is. We know what the problem is. This president refuses to even admit the problem. It's kind of hard for the president to solve a problem when he doesn't even admit it's a problem. Yet let's talk about the numbers. Over 2 million people have come across our border illegally just last year. That's more than the entire state of New Mexico have come into our country illegal, and this president won't even admit it's a problem. Last year alone, we lost over 100,000 young people to deaths from drugs like fentanyl because we have an open southern border. Everybody should be appalled by that stat. The fact that more than 100 of our youngest, best and brightest kids are dead in America because of the fentanyl coming across of our open southern border. These are drugs made in China coming across our southern border and brought into every community in America. And it should stop. It has to stop, but it won't stop until either the president takes action, which he won't, or we pass legislation on the floor to fix those problems. But that doesn't start until we elect Kevin McCarthy as our speaker. We know what the challenges are. We've laid out solutions to these problems. It's sad to say these aren't problems that are very hard to fix because we weren't in this situation just a few years ago. But if the administration doesn't want to fix these problems, people call on us to do that. And it starts here in the people's house. Let's rise to this challenge. Let's meet the challenges that the American people sent all of us, not just the Republicans, not just the Democrats, but all 434, soon to be 435 of us. We can meet those challenges, but let's start by electing Kevin McCarthy as our next speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Clerk, I rise to nominate Hakeem Jeffries. For unity in Congress.
Has been recognized.
For unity in Congress and progress in our country, Democrats are united behind Hakeem Jeffries. I recommend Hakeem Jeffries as our speaker. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Does not seem like he's seeking recognition, so let's just say the clerk is prepared to call the roll.
The reading clerk is prepared to call the roll.
This is the gentleman from Texas, correct?
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Seek to place a name in a nomination, Speaker.
The gentleman is recognized.
So this is what the chamber looks like when we're actually debating and the bodies are in the chairs. How many times have we been down here giving speeches and there's not a soul in the chamber? Yet this is what it takes to get 435 people in the chamber and have an actual debate. The American people are watching, and that's a good thing. What we're doing is exercising our rights to vote and have a debate and have a discussion about the future of this country through the decision of choosing a speaker. This is not personal. It's not. This is about the future of the country. This is about the direction of the country. American people who are looking at this body and wondering why we can pass $1.7 trillion bills that are unpaid for. They can just slide in $45 billion for Ukraine but not pay for it. $40 billion for emergency spending and not pay for it. 10% increase in defense spending, 6% increase in non-defense spending and not pay for it. And not do a thing except put language in a bill that prohibits our ability to use the money to secure the border. That bill gets rammed through, and we know exactly how it gets rammed through, because the defense world and the non-defense world come together and say, you know what? We're going to cut a deal, and we'll all go to the mics, and we'll all go give speeches, and the American people are the big losers. That's what happens. We know that's what happens. The Rules Committee sits up there and passes a bill, sends it to the floor, and we have no debate on the floor of this body. We haven't been able to offer an amendment on the floor of this body since May of 2016. The former leader and I have discussed this right here. That's true. But the fact is, this place has to change. It has to change. And the change comes by either adopting rules and procedures that will make us actually do our job, or it comes from leadership. And people ask me, what do you want? I want the tools, or I want the leadership to stop the swamp from running over the average American every single day. We can't keep doing this. I'm going to sit here until we figure out how to stop spending money we don't have. I don't want any more empty promises. I don't want any more, oh, don't worry, trust us, we'll do it. I want to know that we're going to be able to exercise our rights as a member of this body to stand up for the American people and actually fix this country. And it's not going to happen when we use our men and women in uniform in defense and wrap ourselves around that and then spend more money that we don't have, weakening that defense, weakening our country in the process. But that's what we just did. Ladies and gentlemen, I am asking for us to come together and figure out how to solve these problems. And to do that, I'm going to do what I did my very first act as a member of Congress, or as a congressman-elect, and nominate Jim Jordan for Speaker. Now, Jim has said he doesn't want that nomination, and Jim has been down here nominating Kevin, and I respect that. And again, I have no personal animus towards Kevin. And I've worked for the last 2 months to try to figure out how to get the rules to make this place better, and we've made progress. But we do not have the tools or the leadership yet to stop the swamp from rolling over the American people. Jim has been doing it. He has a track record of doing it. And for those reasons, I am nominating Jim Jordan from Ohio for Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The reading clerk will call the roll.
I am thoroughly
Adams.
I am thoroughly
Jeffries. Adderholt. McCarthy. Aguilar. Jeffries.
Alford. McCarthy. Allen. McCarthy. Allred. Jeffries. Amaday. McCarthy. Armstrong. McCarthy. Arrington. McCarthy.
1 2 1 2.
Auchincloss.
1 2 1 2 1 2.
Jeffries. Babin. McCarthy.
Okay, my mic wasn't working there for a second. I think it's working now. Chip Roy, man. Do you see the difference between a Steve Scalise? He just goes through the standard, all the talking points. You're like, this is so boring. It's not genuine. Then Chip Roy comes up, straight passion, knowledgeable. You want to run through a brick wall. That's the difference we've got right here. It's real people, or people who can at least act like real people, because I don't know Chip personally, but every time he speaks, it's like that. Yeah, I would completely support him for speaker. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but you see the passion that he has, this is not ending. Oh my Jesus. They're still talking about their historic vote for Kim Jeffries because he's black. Oh my Jesus Christ.
Jeffries. Bergman.
Okay, so let me so they're doing their same thing here where they go through the roll call. There's no commentary, so I won't know what's really going on until it's all done, said and done. But the big thing is that I am very surprised that they're doing a third round this quickly. I would think after this round, people, all the laughs, all those fake smiles, all this cheering and all that, I don't know if that's going to last much longer. They're not used to this. So I think I'm going to go cover some other stories here while they're doing it. I think I mentioned it earlier. I think that Matt Gaetz has made himself the most powerful person in the House. Now, he might not be the most powerful when you talk about money, but as far as a mover and shaker, it seems like Matt Gaetz is the leader of this whole thing, push against McCarthy. Without Matt Gaetz, I don't think this happens. And very similar to how Joe Manchin had, as a minority kind of purplish Dem, he ended up, and Kyrsten Sinema ended up with a lot of power, being in the minority. You see Matt Gaetz and Boebert and anybody else sticking together. They have a lot of power. And like Chip said, that's how this government is designed to run. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. There's no law breaking here. There's no calling people this name or that name. It is what it is. And don't let anybody blame it on the MAGA Republicans. Kevin McCarthy has proven himself to be unworthy of the speaker position if he's going to put people through 3 rounds of votes and not say, I don't know what's going to happen. I appreciate everybody who voted for me. Now go behind Jim Jordan so we can go forward. If you really cared, that's where the pressure would be. I think these 19 Republicans, they have the leverage. I really do. Because McCarthy, everybody knows, people might be afraid to say it, but everybody knows McCarthy is the one that could end this, I think, immediately. So I'll turn this up while I get my next thing ready.
Kamek. McCarthy. Caraveo. Jeffries. Carbajal. Carbajal. Jeffries. Cardenas. Jeffries.
Just double checking to see if I have an echo here. Nope, I do not hear an echo. I'm back to the program.
Carter of Georgia. Carter of Georgia. Carter of Louisiana.
Carter of Louisiana proudly votes for Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Carter of Texas. McCarthy. Cartwright. Jeffries. Kassar. Jeffries. Case. Jeffries. Caston. Jeffries. Castor of Florida. Jeffries. Castro of Texas. Jeffries. Chavez DeRemer. McCarthy. Surfalis McCormick. Jeffries. Chu.
I'm going to play this TikTok here, going off to other topics while they do the vote. And this vote will be the last round for me. I don't know about y'all, but I got to do other stuff here. But I like this TikTok just to do something a little bit off the beaten path, not too much. Jack Posobiec and others are very big on banning TikTok. Trump has said it too. Definitely understand the sentiment. I understand the sentiment, but I don't agree. The issue is bigger than TikTok. You ban TikTok, I'm on Google right now. But I don't have much more respect for Google than I do TikTok. The problem with TikTok, obviously, is that it's going to a foreign adversary. But the more I look at it, I don't even know if China's really a true adversary for the people that we're watching right now. I think they would be an ally underneath a Chinese-style government. They would prefer that to the democracy or the representative republic, the process here of the checks and balances that we're watching. They would rather be in a Chinese government. But there's good stuff that can come from TikTok. They're good TikToks. TikTok isn't the problem. The problem is that there's hidden algorithms. That's the problem. The problem is that people don't own their data. The problem is you can give your data to a foreign country or to Google. That's the problem. So banning TikTok doesn't fix any problem. But here's a great TikTok. I thought it was a great TikTok. And I say this applies to me as well.
Excuse me, what's your rent in LA?
$2,500 a month.
Oh, can I come to your house?
No, you can't come.
Excuse me, what is your least favorite fashion trend?
What's up with all these questions?
Oh, can I come to your house?
Whoa, no, you can't come to my house.
What's your body count?
Let go of me.
I've got a bullet for you.
Oh my God.
Come with me. Get down, get down. Did you give them a sound bite?
I told them my rent.
This place is gonna be swarming with them.
Oh no.
Smash or pass. What song are you listening to? Were you bit?
No.
Come with me.
Shooting me. Why aren't they going down?
Influencers don't die unless they get their sound bite. Get in my car.
Wow, this is an amazing car. What do you do for a living?
What did you say?
This is a nice car. What do you do for a living?
Check out the tire before we go. Check out the tire first.
That's a nice car. What do you do for a living? That's a nice car. What do you do?
I'm sorry, man. That was a great TikTok. If you're just listening, it's a meme. And there are influencers that do this kind of stuff where they, go out in the mall or the streets and ask these questions, whether it's they try to show different types of influencers that would go and do these things, these questions to random people, or these fake questions to set up to go viral. And we're all zombies. So they're all asking her the questions. They're all asking like zombies. So this person bit her right here. So she became a zombie influencer asking questions. And you might have seen the Supergirl who worked at the Waffle House that blocked the chair. I know you saw that video. Somebody in the chat, tell me if you didn't see that video. It was so good. So she just knocks this chair. They're having a fight. It's a Waffle House, so of course it's a fight. Somebody threw a chair at her, and she just parries the chair, just like Wonder Woman or something. And you look around the restaurant while they're fighting. There's like 10 people with cell phones out. We're all zombies. It applies to me. I replied to it. I don't think people got it. I really don't think people got it. I replied, I said, What a great TikTok. It applies to me and everybody who even uses social media as well. So it showed the influencers as zombies because we are zombies to the algorithm or whatever process it is. It doesn't matter if you're political or not. It doesn't matter if you're Tim Pool, Eric July, myself, or Stephen Crowder, whoever you want, Jimmy Dore. We're all the same. It's legit. Not that, but I'm saying we're all in the same. We're all in that algorithm zombie type system. Now, I'm not saying people on the channel here, I don't believe I think like a zombie, but in the larger picture of social media, I am definitely one. And it applies to everybody watching as well. I thought it was amazing. What a great TikTok. Wow, that had 100,000 views, that tweet. Wow. I said, what a great TikTok. It applies to me and everyone who even uses social media as well. Somebody said, I don't go around asking people these questions, so no, it does not apply to me. No, you didn't get it. You're reading it too literally. It does apply to you. You're applying on Twitter. You're a part of that process. You just didn't get it. But I thought that was a cute little video there. I'll go back to the process real quick. See if there's anything else. Wow, somebody replied to me on Twitter, said that, am I sharing this? No. That Marjorie Taylor Greene is now backed by the swamp, so her career might be safe. Ooh, interesting comeback.
Right now, look, unless McCarthy's got something else up his sleeve, the strategy is to just show that you're strong, that you're not shaking, and that
it's over. So they're showing the 8 votes for Jordan. That's too many. If 5 people, to my knowledge, if 5 people vote elsewhere, assuming everybody votes, that's another wrinkle here. You got to be careful of that because that goes to Jeffries. That could happen. I mean, it is possible. But they're commentating now because they know for sure it's going to be another. It's going to go to a 4th ballot, most likely with 8 people voting Jordan. Then the only interesting thing from here now is to see if anybody else switches over to Jordan or from Jordan to McCarthy. We want to see, is there a crack? Where's the first crack? Is one of the 19 going to go with McCarthy, or is one of the McCarthy going to go elsewhere?
Would go 2 ballots with Kevin McCarthy, and then his vote would be up for grabs, meaning he could go to McCarthy on the 3rd ballot, or he could go to someone else. Well, Donald's true to his word, just voted for Jim Jordan. He is the first, by my count, the first member to flip over the course of these ballots from Kevin McCarthy to someone else, and a sign that Kevin McCarthy is not picking up votes, he's losing votes, because as of right now, we haven't seen anyone change their vote from someone else to Kevin McCarthy. We've only seen Donald's change from McCarthy to Jim Jordan. The other votes that have changed are people changing from Andy Biggs, who was the McCarthy protest candidate, to Jim Jordan, who's another McCarthy protest candidate, because Jordan has said himself to be Speaker of the House. So we're seeing defections away from Kevin McCarthy right now at this hour. And as you noted, Kira, looks like 9 people so far have voted for Jim Jordan. That is 9 Republicans who have said they do not want Kevin McCarthy to be their Speaker, which means Kevin McCarthy officially loses this 3rd ballot as well, unless someone else captures a majority, which is very unlikely right now. We are going on to the 4th ballot where McCarthy will try to...
Whoa, breaking news. The first crack that we've seen, the vote's not over, was from McCarthy to Jordan. I don't know who Donald is, who he's referring to. Wow.
To have the candidates who might be the most likely of those waiting in the wings to take McCarthy's place to come out and nominate McCarthy. So on the 2nd ballot, we saw Jim Jordan, who's not in House Republican leadership, although he's a very prominent House Republican, come out and nominate Kevin McCarthy and to say to everyone who was voting for him, don't vote for me, vote for Kevin McCarthy. That did not prove successful. Then on the 3rd ballot, Steve Scalise, who's often discussed as this speaker in waiting if Kevin McCarthy doesn't get the votes he needs, Kevin McCarthy comes out, Steve Scalise comes out and nominates Kevin McCarthy. It's a mechanism from Team McCarthy, it appears, of saying the alternatives want Kevin, so who are your alternatives to the Never McCarthy Republicans? And right now, their alternative is Jim Jordan, who again, who said he doesn't want to be the Speaker. So it appears they don't have viable alternatives other than finding candidates who will just say no to, or other than voting for people as a no to Kevin McCarthy. So how does the GOP come back from this point and coalesce around a candidate, whether that's Kevin McCarthy, whether that's Steve Scalise or someone else? They do not have a path to that right now, Kira. And as the day gets further and further away from noon, when the House began all of this, the harder it is to see a path for Kevin McCarthy, and the likelier it gets that Republicans try to find someone else that can get to 218 votes.
The question is who that someone else could be. You know, looking back at my, it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like the first speaker vote that Byron Donalds of Florida, who just flipped, actually had been nominated and received a vote. I think that was the first time around. So it's interesting to see, you know, sort of the same small amount of players here, whether it's Jordan now.
I did not talk about this. I did not talk about this. And I was listening to, I think it was War Room. Byron Donalds was on the War Room, and he said he was McCarthy, no doubt. And I was let down because he's done a lot of good things in Florida. He is someone I've been following. He's been really good with money, on top of the issues, based a lot of the times. And to hear him go McCarthy, I was disappointed. Florida 19th District. It sounds like they are saying Byron Donalds flipped. If I were to pick one of the people to have flipped, he would have been on the top of the list. Because he's been based the whole time. I'm surprised he even went with MTG. I honestly don't think he followed this closely enough, just from afar, because he didn't really talk about it much. And when he talked about it, he didn't seem like he really understood the seriousness of the nature of what was happening. Byron Donalds, breaking news. It's reported that Byron Donalds moved from McCarthy to Jim Jordan.
Jeffries. Hoyer. Jeffries. Hoyle of Oregon. Jeffries. Hudson. McCarthy. Huffman. Jeffries. Huizinga. McCarthy. Hunt. McCarthy. Issa.
I joined my friend and incoming chairman of Judiciary, Jim Jordan, in supporting Kevin McCarthy.
McCarthy. Ivey. Jeffries. Jackson of Illinois. Jeffries. Jackson of North Carolina. Jeffries. Jackson of Texas. McCarthy. Jackson Lee.
Remain committed to the voices of Mark Jordan, Michael King, John Lewis, and Ivy Cummings in supporting the next Speaker of the House,
Jeffries. Jacobs. Jeffries. James. McCarthy. Jayapal. Jeffries. 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 Johnson of Georgia.
Without frustration, Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Johnson of Louisiana. McCarthy. Johnson of Ohio. McCarthy. Johnson of South Dakota. McCarthy. Jordan. McCarthy. Joyce of Ohio. McCarthy. Joyce of Pennsylvania. McCarthy. Kemlager Dove. Jeffries. Captor. Jeffries. Kane of New Jersey. McCarthy. Keating. Jeffries. Kelly of Illinois. Jeffries. Kelly of Mississippi. McCarthy. Kelly of Pennsylvania. McCarthy. Kana. Jeffries. Kiggins of Virginia. Kiggins of Virginia. McCarthy. Kildee. Jeffries. Kiley. McCarthy. Kilmer. Jeffries. Kim of California. McCarthy. Kim of New Jersey. Jeffries. Krishnamurthy. Jeffries. Custer. Jeffries. Kustoff. McCarthy. LaHood. McCarthy. LaLoida. McCarthy. LaMalfa. McCarthy. Lamborn. McCarthy. Landsman. Jeffries. Langworthy. McCarthy. Larson of Washington. Jeffries. Larson of Connecticut. Jeffries. Latta. McCarthy. LaTurner. Lawler.
The Honorable Kevin McCarthy.
McCarthy. Lee of California. Jeffries. Lee of Florida. McCarthy. Lee of Nevada. Jeffries. Lee of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Ledger Fernandez. Jeffries. Lesko. McCarthy. Letlow. McCarthy. Levin. Jeffries. Liu. Jeffries. Lofgren. Jeffries. Loudermilk. McCarthy. Lucas. McCarthy. Lukemeyer. McCarthy. Luna. Jordan. Luttrell. McCarthy. Lynch. Jeffries. Mace. McCarthy. Magaziner. Jeffries. Maliotakis. McCarthy. Mann. McCarthy. Manning. Jeffries. Massey. McCarthy. Mast. McCarthy. Matsui. Jeffries. McBath. Jeffries. McCarthy. McCarthy. McCall. McCarthy. McLean. McCarthy. McClintock. McCarthy. McCollum. Jeffries.
I had to charge my laptop a little bit, disconnect my mic.
McCarthy. McGarvey. Jeffries. McGovern. Jeffries. McHenry. McCarthy. Meeks. Jeffries. Menendez. Jeffries. Ming. Jeffries. Muser. McCarthy. And Fume.
So I had to charge my mic, so just let the count go. I had to charge my laptop, so I just let the count go. I do have some breaking news from Charlie Kirk. I don't know what this means exactly. I think I'm still trying to wrap my head around what this means, but it is proof that, not proof, it's evidence. It's just anecdotal evidence at this point. Hearsay from Charlie Kirk. He says as they finish that count up, it looks like that round's not going to go anywhere, but the fourth round could be crazy if there is one today. I'm going to be out for streaming before the fourth round for sure. Charlie Kirk reports from House source, 2 very plugged-in Dem leadership aides say they are already talking about a coalition leadership to divide the House evenly between Republicans and Democrats. So I'm trying to think what that means. They're talking about a coalition leadership. So so my interpretation is that it would be a co-majority. So Kevin McCarthy, he might go that route. It would expose him as a fraud. If Kevin McCarthy would rather do a joint speakership, is that what he means by coalition leadership? I'll have to see what the comments are. I don't know what that means. I wonder if Charlie's live streaming this. I don't think he is. He's not live streaming this. Charlie Kirk's not live streaming this. But just in case, I'll check it out. Oh, I think he is actually. Oh, let me go to, I apologize. I should have been, well, it's good to get the mainstream view at times, but I'm going to go over to the Charlie Kirk feed.
Jeffries.
So Charlie Kirk is doing the C-SPAN feed, though, so I kind of like having commentary at times for stuff like this. We'll see how this goes.
Moran.
C-SPAN doesn't have any real commentary there. But from the House source, he said they're going to do a coalition. Let's see what that means.
Muskowitz. Jeffries. Moulton. Jeffries. Mervyn.
I don't know. I don't really know what that means.
Mullen.
But Marjorie Taylor Greene replied.
Murphy.
Marjorie Taylor Greene replied, if the base only understood that 19 Republicans voting against McCarthy are playing Russian roulette with our hard-earned Republican majority right now. This is the worst thing that could possibly happen. So she's just digging in. So it's interesting that she's taking that take instead of saying McCarthy could acquiesce. I don't know who got to her or how she came, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is digging in. Very interesting. I'm going to go to Charlie Kirk's feed to see if he has any other breaking news, because that is big news that you're getting from Charlie Kirk and nobody else that I've seen. Let's see here. Yep, that's the last tweet. Yep, the last tweet is him saying that they're talking about a coalition leadership. Wow. We'll have to see what that means. I do not know. I want clarification. I have no idea what that means.
Pappas.
So technically the House
Jeffries. Pasquarel.
technically the House can make whatever rules they want. So they could just make up rules. I don't know if there's ever been historically. There's Pelosi.
Jeffries.
I can't believe I've seen Pelosi, but I haven't seen Marjorie Taylor Greene. That is.
Jeffries.
If you don't know, Hakeem Jeffries was like her
Jeffries.
Padawan.
Pence.
They're getting kind of loopy. You're hearing more silly answers. They're getting a little. You can tell they're getting a little loopy.
Jordan.
While that count is going, I'm trying to figure out if anybody knows what the Charlie Kirk tweet really means.
Pedersen.
It's not one of Charlie's better tweets. Is that something you're supposed to know what it means? A coalition of leadership? What is that?
Phillips. Jeffries.
Yeah, I don't see a definition of that.
Jeffries.
Coalition leadership.
Pocan. Jeffries. Porter.
That would be full uniparty mask off if they said McCarthy. So McCarthy, I told you McCarthy could be making a deal with Pelosi, and that's what it could be. Not a deal, but talking to Pelosi, like, how do I get out of this? You know, if you go to Pelosi, I'm just saying hypothetically, I'm not saying I know anything. But if you go to a Pelosi and ask her for help on something, all avenues for your help will go through benefiting her. So she might say, you don't have a problem to your maggot problem. You know, obviously I don't view it like that, but that's how she would view it. You don't have an answer to it. But here's what we could try to sell is my Padawan, Hakeem Jeffries, and you both share Speaker of the House. Maybe it's never, I don't even know if it's happened before. I'll have to Google it and see. But Nancy Pelosi could say, do you want to share the speakership role with my Padawan? Maybe we could make that happen.
Jordan. Ross. Jeffries. Rouser. McCarthy. Roy. Jordan. Ruiz. Jeffries. Rupersberger. Jeffries. Rutherford.
I'm searching quickly. I'm not seeing anything on the history of a co-leadership of the House. But again, they can make their own rules, so they can do anything. There's nobody, when you talk about the separation of powers, that only applies when you're outside of your governing body. So the House, those 435 members there, I believe it's 435. I think there's only 434 that are voting, but I don't know if the numbers changed or what. But the 430-something people there, they can make whatever rules they want. That's why when they did the J6 committee, they didn't have the right breakup that they had agreed to. It doesn't matter. The problem is, though, if you go outside of the House and say, well, we have this power, then that's the separation of powers. We don't have to listen to you. The judicial branch doesn't have to listen to you.
McCarthy.
So they can make up whatever. They could say, hey, we created this new position. It's the co-speaker of the House. If they have the votes. I don't know how they would even get the votes for that, though. They would have to get the votes somehow by making a hell of a deal. That seems unlikely to me. I think the most likely avenue is McCarthy giving up, believe it or not.
Jeffries. Schreier.
Because again, the MAGA faction only needs 5. They've got 19. They've got 20 now. If everybody stays the same with Byron Donald switching over, they got 20 for Jordan now. It's only getting bigger. And they only need 5. So I don't see Kevin McCarthy weaseling out of this one.
Scott of Virginia. Jeffries. Self. Jordan. Sessions. McCarthy. Sewell. Jeffries. Sherman.
Okay, so I'm going to go out here. I'm going to leave out, though, on this note. I don't know if anybody saw this, but
Simpson.
Matt Gaetz' wife actually was testing the acoustics at the Capitol.
Jeffries.
And she sang a little bit of the Star Spangled Banner. And I'll
McCarthy.
definitely be updating with whatever I hear when I can on this vote here, this historic. You see it went up to 20. So they got more votes for Jim Jordan.
Smith of Washington.
I'm surprised by
Jeffries.
that. I am surprised.
Smucker.
But here's the Star Spangled Banner. I'll be
McCarthy.
out. Just the end of it. Kind of beautiful stuff singing there with no, it's hard to hear yourself to sing in tune here. Appreciate y'all.